Hi, everyone. I'm Mita Mallick. I'm a diversity, equity, and inclusion thought leader, contributing to publications like Harvard Business Review, Fast Company, and Entrepreneur. I'm also a LinkedIn top voice, so please go over to LinkedIn and come join me there for community and conversation. And the most important role in my life I have is I am mom to my kids, Jay and Priya. When National Speakers Bureau founding director Mandy Shah reached out to me about collaborating on today's expo, I was humbled and also I was overwhelmed because this was the first time an Asian Pacific Islander-centered Speaker Expo has ever been attempted and executed in North America. Incredibly exciting. As a kid, I didn't see many stories being told that included people who looked like me. I was the funny-looking dark-skinned girl with a long, funny-looking braid whose parents spoke funny English until it wasn't funny anymore. I was bullied by my peers for years, and I just desperately wanted to fit in. I wanted to belong. And as an adult throughout my career, and when I keynote events and MC, just like I am today, I have fought really hard to ensure people like me are included. So today's expo represents a historic moment where Asian and Pacific Islanders, speakers, and allies are rewriting the stories that are being told about us. 50 speakers, that's right, you heard 50 speakers have come together to transform public perceptions through public speaking. That's why I immediately said yes to Mandy to be here today with all of you. Magic happens when our different points of view, life experiences, and cultural backgrounds come together. We all do belong. In the next few hours, you'll hear incredible messages that address leadership, diversity, equity, and inclusion, health, and career advancement issues, and solutions from speakers who have been selected from a rigorous audition and selection and rehearsal process. To facilitate the expo will be a team of masters of ceremonies. Dr. Julie Huang is the proud daughter of Chinese immigrants and a first-generation college student. Despite growing up in a low-income family in Los Angeles, she felt fortunate to have had amazing mentors who helped guide her to where she is today. A Caltech graduate, Fulbright scholar, and Stanford-trained scientist, she leads the biomarker strategy in clinical trials to understand how novel therapies impact neurodegenerative diseases. In addition to research, Julie is passionate about science communication and mentorship of next-generation scientists. Dr. Robert Peterson is a DE&I expert. He is also world-renowned academic scholar, Black and Korean community activist, feminist, and race and gender subject matter expert. These past few years have been a difficult period of his life. In March 2021, a mass shooting took place in an Asian-owned spa business in Atlanta, Georgia, resulting in the killing of 8 people. One of them was his beloved mother. This tragedy inspired him to dedicate his life to sharing Black and Asian experiences individually and as they intersect. To close out the event today with Robert is Masters of Ceremonies, Isa Kujawski. I will introduce Isa later in the program. Robert and Julie, I now turn the virtual mic over to you. Thank you all.
We opened the First Class Expo today with a career breakthrough message on self-promotion. Often referred to as the client whisperer, this speaker has brilliantly connected brands to consumers for more than 20 years. I understand she's also the office fashionista. Besides being a senior marketing leader, she is a podcast host and a sought-after speaker, moderator, and panelist. In 2021, she became an advisory board member for the nonprofit organization, Asians in Advertising. Our opening speaker is Suzie Bao for her message titled Self-Promotion for Career Breakthrough. Please help me welcome Suzie Bao, Self-Promotion for Career Breakthrough.
Let me start with an origin story of me. When I was a little girl in 2nd grade, I was that typical quiet, shy Asian girl who rarely ever spoke. So one day, I was suddenly pulled out of class and put into ESL, English as a second language. Now, because I never spoke, they thought I couldn't speak English. Soon after, they learned I did speak English, and pretty well, probably better than many of my classmates. So they put me back into my regular class. Now, as a young kid, I was traumatized and humiliated. And looking back now, I realize that was a cultural barrier that I had to overcome in order to find a successful career. I'm sure many of you can relate to a moment like that. Now, I had to learn the hard way throughout my career to speak up in a corporate environment because it was just never taught to me. It was definitely not in my cultural DNA. There wasn't a role model in my life that I could emulate. Oftentimes, though, when I did speak up, people thought I was being defensive, or I definitely didn't feel seen or heard. I'm often taught to respect my elders, so I wouldn't dare speak up to my boss or leaders, even if I disagreed. I would default back to my quiet nature and hoping someone would notice me and my great work. Now, the consequences are that I got overlooked for promotions many times. I wouldn't get the good projects. Instead, I would get the ones that no one wanted. Or I definitely didn't get credit that was due to me for the work I've done, but instead, it went to someone else, louder than me. I understand more than anyone that we needed our culture to survive. But let's take a deeper look at some of those cultural barriers that kept us from thriving in the workplace. So I'm here to share my wisdom and learnings in this area. I'll share a few strategies to overcome some of those barriers that keep us from getting promoted, achieving a higher leadership role, and most definitely being seen and heard. One of my favorite strategies is humble bragging. Now, many of us have a hard time speaking up, as I did as a little girl and in my early career, let alone talking about our great work and all the things we've done. It doesn't feel authentic, and it's out of our comfort zone. Humble bragging is a great way to be not only true to who you are, at the same time, making sure your accomplishments are heard. So here's a couple of examples of humble bragging that I've done for myself. It was such an honor when I got to speak at South by Southwest this year. It was truly a professional bucket list. We didn't even expect people to show up, let alone actually maxed out the room. There were no more seats left and people were standing room only. Now that's humble bragging. This was a way to show my humility while at the same time sharing my accomplishment of speaking at this amazing event. Here's another example. People often called me the client whisperer because I'm usually able to turn around a challenging client to a more fruitful and prosperous relationship. So then I became known as the client whisperer. Now, in that example, I used a third-party endorsement. So it didn't seem like I was saying I was a client whisperer or bragging about my accomplishments with challenging clients. I said that people called me that, so I became known for it. So in my talk, I will share this useful technique as well as other strategies to help you speak up and humble brag for yourself. I think back at that little second grader, and now to me, present day, I'm Suzie Bao, marketing leader, podcast host, moderator, panelist, and speaker. Thank you.
Wow, what a way to start off the Speakers Expo. I really like how she talked about some of the cultural barriers that we do face, putting our head down and just trying to get through the day. But again, even as my background as a PhD and speaking several classes and several presentations, I still find it hard to promote myself as well as just getting in there. What did you think about our first speaker, Julie?
Yeah, I thought she gave a truly insightful talk there. I could definitely resonate with what she shared, early on in my career, feeling like, how do I get myself out there without coming across, as bragging? And so I really love how she not only brought this topic to the center of her talk, but also really giving us some tips and strategies on how we can go about promoting what we are passionate about without feeling uncomfortable and inauthentic. So I thought it was a great talk.
I picked up on that as well. In addition to telling a personal story, but she also gave us strategies and tools to use in our own professions, right? Regardless of where we are in our career, on how to not only promote ourselves, but to share our stories as well. And so again, I just want to remind everyone out there, if they are interested in hearing more from Suzie Bao or any of our speakers that we'll hear today, please go down to the comment section to find out some additional information, or you can always email the Speakers Bureau at nap.org to book any of our speakers today. So really great way to start off the presentation.
Yeah, I'm excited. Ready for the next speaker?
Absolutely.
All right. So the next career advancement message of the Expo reminds me of what founding director Mandy Shaw said about the corporate world. Don't hate the player, beat the game. Our next speaker is a wildly successful career tactician who will enlighten us with proven tactics to conquer the corporate game that would take a lifetime for us to pick up otherwise. Conquer the corporate game with proven tactics. Who's the speaker? Well, he will introduce himself now. Take it away.
Hi, my name is Dave Liu. I'm a 30-year veteran of Wall Street and Silicon Valley and rose to the top of one of the world's major investment banks. As a quick background, I worked on Wall Street for almost 25 years, climbing the corporate ladder from the entry-level janitor suite to the executive suite, where I was a managing director and group co-head. My goal today is to teach you some of the tactics that helped me rise the corporate ladder and break through the bamboo ceiling during my 30-year career. To start, I believe that the world isn't fair and that the corporate game is exactly that, a game, where the rules are fluid and working hard and keeping your head down can be a recipe for disaster. It can be a one-way trip to an unfulfilling career, or even worse, ejection at middle management. But before we get into the exact tactics of climbing the corporate ladder, start with the basic rules of the game. One of the first is to get the lay of the land. I'm always shocked how so few people actually do this. They start a job without having a clue as to how job progression really works within their company. Not only do most people not do homework on their own job, but they also only have a vague inkling as to their immediate boss's job. So what should you do? First, get the org chart and have coffee with people who have roles you'd like to have in the future. Better yet, find a senior person who is ideally Asian American and the same gender as you. If you're lucky, they'll show you all the landmines and fast lanes they navigated up the corporate ladder. What they will teach you will be invaluable in your career and save you a lot of time. As you scale the corporate ladder, be aware that as Asian Americans, much of our mindset that gets ingrained in us when we're young actually hampers us as we climb up. For example, as kids, we get our latest report card, and when we get all A's and one B, we all know what happens, right? Our parents say, "Why'd you get a B?" This mentality gets pounded into us throughout school and stays with us when we enter the workforce. We are trained to believe that we need to be good at everything to succeed. We need to get all A's. Ironically, this can really hurt us when it's time for promotion. We try to be good at everything, but time is a zero-sum game. And by trying to be good at everything, we're not great at any one thing. Other candidates realize that to rise the corporate ladder, there are usually only one or two things that the organization really values. They know that if you're great at that one thing, then they can make up for other deficiencies. So they focus their energies on honing that one skill. So when promotion time comes and there's only one slot available, guess who gets it? The other guy. The person who's great at the one thing that really matters. This explains why as you move up, you look around, you ask yourself, how's this person my boss? Or how'd that guy get promoted? They're not as reliable. They're not as good at problem solving. Heck, they aren't even great teammates. Well, it's because they mastered the one thing that your company really values: salesmanship in banking, product expertise in tech. You get the idea. The bottom line is that as you climb the corporate ladder, you need to learn that being great at that one key thing that your company values is better than being good at everything. So figure out what that is, work on it, and be ready to compromise on other skills. You also need to learn how to neuter the negative biases like the model minority myth. For many of us, the biggest one is that we're just worker bees. Obviously, you can't become queen bee if you aren't given leadership opportunities. So how do you break this catch-22? Well, I did it by taking evolutionary steps and not expecting to conquer Rome in a day. When I hit middle management, I could see that I was going to drive my career off a cliff if I didn't prove I could be a senior banker. So just how the Allies won World War II by first storming Normandy, I found my own beachheads and worked my way from there. I identified low-stakes situations where I could prove I was a leader, situations where my bosses wouldn't care if I screwed up. I did this by signing up for the crappy jobs. These are the low-stakes projects where if you screw up, it isn't the end of the world, but it's a way for you to slowly prove yourself. On Wall Street, these jobs are those that aren't directly associated with revenue. That's HR and conferences. On conferences, I'd be the MC and run panels. I'd have idle banter on stage with CEOs and masters of the universe. On recruiting, I'd volunteer to train the troops, share the firm's ethos, etc. And slowly, I could see my bosses saw in me someone that might be able to hold a conversation with C-level execs, someone who wouldn't embarrass the firm and might actually be able to represent the firm. In effect, I made them start to think that perhaps I could be a leader one of these days. Eventually, once I'd proven myself with the low stakes, I'd upgrade to live ammunition drills with actual clients. If I could turn any of these into revenue, the key source of power in the firm, I'd be on my way. I did this by suggesting that if my boss and I had a big pitch in some city we had to fly to, I'd ask him if I could stay another night and meet some prospects. They'd be companies that frankly he didn't care about or had written off. For me, these drills made me a better banker and helped me figure out my shtick. I learned that a more conversational style worked best for me. It helped me learn how to read people. Everyone has tells. Reading and learning the ones of your colleagues, bosses, underlings, customers is the key to getting ahead. And so this is how I began the long journey of ultimately getting my own book of business and moving me up the evolutionary scale. It also taught me a key tenet of building relationships with anyone, a prospect, your boss, even your spouse. The key is to get someone's undivided attention and overcoming attentional bias, a fancy term for the fact that no one reads or listens to anything anymore. I call it goldfishitis because the bottom line is we all have the attention spans shorter than a goldfish. An easy way to think about this is the following. Be a stork who delivers the baby, who brings value. If you aren't adding value, then you're in the way, you're overhead, you're replaceable. I can tell you from 30 years of corporate experience, the vast majority of people don't actually do this. In fact, they do the opposite. Rather than being the stork who delivers the baby, who delivers solutions, they're pigeons. Pigeons do the opposite. They fly in, they criticize everything, and then they leave. And you know what happens to pigeons? Well, they aren't the boss, so they don't ingratiate themselves to anyone. In fact, they become the people organizations think are not bringing real value and are ones they think about first when considering who to replace, who not to promote. So if you really want to stick out from the crowd, always bring value, especially when you're junior. When you're more senior, you can be a little bit more like a pigeon, but that only works once you're the boss and people have to listen to you. So bottom line, if you want to get ahead, be a stork, not a pigeon. I'd like to thank you for listening today. As I hope you can tell, I'm very passionate about passing along the wisdom I learned from the School of Hard Knocks to the next generation. I look forward to sharing more tips, tricks, and smart cuts with your organization to break the bamboo ceiling.
Wow, thank you so much, Dave Liu, for that really amazing talk. I think I learned so much in that short 7 minutes, and I can remember just as I was starting out in my career, so many of the things he shared with us really would have been so helpful to be able to figure out how do I navigate this whole corporate world, right? I know now after having gone through all that experience, when I speak with students and early career professionals, I definitely emphasize a lot of the things he mentioned, being able to meet people, do informational interviews, figure out your org chart. So many of what he shared was just really, really great advice there. What do you think, Robert?
You know, I think about the same thing. We have an idea in our head of what climbing the corporate ladder looks like, regardless of your field, right? The steps of getting tenure in our academic background or getting up to middle management. But sometimes you have to change the ladders and you have to start that process over again. So when he talked about reaching out and finding allies, and I really liked how he talked about practicing on lower level missions and to accomplish your goals. And so that's one way, again, to go back to Suzie's point of self-promotion, is getting yourself known and creating a new vision for what you really want people to see, the work that you can do. And so I really appreciated that he was able to do that.
Yeah, and so if anyone out there, you're interested in learning more about Dave Liu and the work that he does, please see the chat for information on how to book Dave Liu for your next event.
Yeah, and you know, even if you're not in corporate, there's still an upward trajectory, right? Where we all want to achieve a leadership position, hopefully, and inspired to do that. And so I think no matter what field you are, it is about not only promoting yourself, but finding people in that field that can help you navigate that space to prove yourself and demonstrate your competencies. And so, again, what an amazing speaker that was. So we can move on to our next speaker. So our next speaker makes AAA games. Because I'm not a gamer, I had to look that up as well. But these are products that deliver the best gaming experience, and Brian has helped teams deliver over 40 of them. In addition to chairing a 1,500-member Asian, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander employee resource group across 5 different continents. Now, as a speaker, he often draws upon his community service experience with organizations such as the Asian Leaders Alliance. Today, he will share an impactful message to encourage you to activate your agency to unlock your power. Please help me welcome Brian Pang for his presentation, Activate Your Agency to Unlock Your Power.
Hi, everyone. Hope you're all enjoying the NAP First Class Speaker Expo so far. Thank you to Mandy, Michael, Amanda, and the event team for putting this expo together to uplift diverse speakers and for giving me the privilege to share with you all today. As you heard in my introduction, my name is Brian Pang, pronouns are he, him, and I'm here to share a bit about activating your agency to unlock your true power. First, let me share some context and why activating agency is important, especially for Asian Americans and Asian Canadians. Our communities are commonly typecast in the North American workplace as highly technical executors and doers, but not as influential thought leaders, creative problem solvers, or executive material. In many cases, we often play into these stereotypes, and we also often perpetuate them, in particular when we are given many rewards for modeling what is deemed as ideal worker bee behavior within our corporate systems. But many of us know this. We are creative, and we can influence, and we can lead. This is why so many innovative and prominent household brands are founded, run, and operated by Asian Americans and Asian Canadians. We just aren't conditioned to break non-conforming patterns. And many of us first, second, and even third generation Asian Americans and Canadians, we suffer from identity crises, in particular those of us third culture individuals. And for those of us who know we have this amazing creativity and leadership potential within us, yet do others know it too? How can we make sure our allies and others around us know it as well and begin to shift how they perceive us? How do we break the biases and stereotypes and show that we can unlock this power within our current work environments and not have to found a startup or build our own house to live as our true authentic selves at work? Well, the answer is to activate our agency and empower ourselves as Asian Americans and Asian Canadians. And yes, it starts with us. One thing is assured, no one else will unlock our power for us. The workplace equity data and our underrepresentation in leadership levels clearly shows this. In this session, I will share a few of the ways we can learn to activate our agency together. And due to time constraints, I will go wide but not deep into any of these, but I hope to in future speaking sessions. First, develop self-awareness. Think about how beliefs and biases common within our communities, which fuel issues such as imposter syndrome, perfectionism, the need to please others, to avoid confrontations. Think about all that and build awareness of how these affect how you show up and show out. These beliefs and biases are systemic, and cultural, and intergenerational, yielded from traumas and misperceptions, and perhaps from our upbringing or how we're conditioned. And these contribute to us thinking that we can't drive or lead or deserve more than what we have. Then our workplace and societal systems actively keep us within these boxes, to be very grateful and to keep chasing that proverbial carrot and to avoid that proverbial stick. In order for us to activate our agency, to unlock our power, we must develop awareness on what is holding us back. Next, let's revisit our cultural and intergenerational tendencies to keep our heads down, to work hard, and hope to be noticed. Now, by now, we should have all heard about the model minority myth and how it was a social construct designed to pit minorities against each other by weaponizing Eastern values and characteristics and behaviors exhibited by Asian immigrants in the 1960s. Examples back then included a mindset of outworking everyone else, submissive behaviors such as staying quiet and being agreeable and prioritizing harmony over conflict. Unfortunately, these tendencies have persisted across generations, and also the perception of our allies and majority cohorts have also persisted. In order to unlock our power, we must work to bust the model minority myth and also break the stereotypes commonly associated with Asian Americans. We also need to acknowledge and unpack these tendencies, which we've inherited, adopted, and developed, then determine how these can be utilized to benefit others in various situations compared to other behaviors. Next, develop a sense of urgency. We have much more power than we think. We all have platforms and megaphones and opportunities to lead, influence, and enact change more than ever before, especially with social tools, technology, and an influx of leaders giving back and uplifting others, and folks actively seeking this guidance. So the choice is yours. Would you like to enter the arena and unlock your power, or sit on the sidelines and watch while others activate their agency and reach their potential? I know which side I'll be on when it's all said and done. Another way to activate your agency is to become a servant leader. When entering an interaction, think about how you can serve the other party. What are the skills and connections you bring which can add value to others? A key to being a servant leader is to build up your influence and relationship-based power, which requires continuously adding value to others without hindering their ability to accomplish the goals that the collective needs to achieve. Servant leadership is not about leveraging your authority or role to coerce others to do what you say or ask. It's about helping others understand the why and the how what you're asking for will benefit the collective and the individual. I learned a hard lesson in my early days as a manager. I remember once talking within earshot of my team about the possibility of working overtime. My team then proceeded to cancel their weekend plans, even though I had not yet formally asked. And that's when I learned the importance of words, coming from someone with authority and role power. In this case, it was me. And I vowed at that point to always be transparent, to start with why, and to never use my role power unless there was a specific and critical situation which required it to be used. In situations and dynamics such as these, which involve role power, they're usually win-lose situations. And I find that servant leadership and utilizing relationship-based power typically results in win-wins. Next, develop an abundance mindset. You ever heard of crabs in a barrel mentality? If you've ever seen crabs in a barrel, any one particular crab can easily climb out by stepping on top of the others. But the other crabs will actively work to pull that crab down to prevent it from getting out. This is rooted in a scarcity mindset, right? Crabs have the mentality of, if I can't have it, then you can't either. But what if each crab worked together to push each other out, and those who climb out then turn back to lift the others out as well? That would be an abundance mindset, whereby we all believe there are enough resources to go around for everyone. An abundance mindset is also what win-win looks like. Imagine this in your life. What does it look like when you and people around you all influence each other to achieve your goals? How can you start thinking win-win and operating with an abundance mindset today? Next, redefine success. This one is quite personal, so I will ask a series of thought-provoking questions. Is success to you climbing the corporate ladder, receiving a promotion every 3 to 5 years, and earning a few $1,000s more after tax? Or is it to make a positive impact through your work to benefit your communities, society, and the world? Is it to uplift other people so that they can achieve and deliver impact through their platforms as well? Individual success can be very meaningful, but is it coming at the expense of collective success? Think about how your current mindset of success contributes to your happiness. Is your happiness fleeting? And does your success leave you craving even more? And how could that energy, motivation, and drive be channeled differently to create a multiplier effect? And with that, I am sadly out of time for today. You heard some ways we can activate our agency to unlock our true power through developing self-awareness, battling through our imposter syndrome, our perfectionism, and our cultural and intergenerational tendency to keep our head down, work hard, and hope to be noticed, then develop a sense of urgency, become a servant leader, develop an abundance mindset, and redefine success. Please join me in a future session to dive deeper into what I discussed, and also to learn more ways we can activate our agency together. For example, how to seek out support and sponsorship, how to develop our personal brand of consistent excellence and impact delivery. How can we shift the mindset of those around us and help others redefine our potential? Through all that, our true power will be unlocked. Thank you for tuning into my talk at the NAP First Class Speaker Expo. Again, my name is Brian Pang, he, him, and I hope through my talks, you can activate your agency to unlock your power. See you all soon, and have a happy and prosperous Lunar New Year.
Wow, again, another great presentation by Brian. Especially a lot of things were said that resonates with me. As a sociologist, we often talk about structure, things like race, class, and gender, and how they shape us. But I like how you talked about activating our agency, right? Things that we have to do and how we have to self-promote and interject ourselves. You know, I think about as a Black and Korean American, how I present myself in different spaces, how I have to show up and make sure that I redefine success, right? That I get to create a new image of what people may think of when they think Black or when they think of a Korean American. And so, I mean, I really like how he gave us some tools and how to activate that agency and not be afraid and really step out there. So that really is one thing that I really did pick up from Brian's presentation. How about you, Julie?
I completely agree with you, Robert. That was yet another amazing talk with such powerful messages. I love the thought-provoking questions that he asked us there at the end, especially on how do we redefine our success. I know personally for me, this has also been a journey, especially over the last couple of years during the pandemic. Really, for me, understanding what does it mean to be Asian American in this day and age. And I think for me personally, this has been a topic that I'd never really thought too much about. I think probably because of this concept of the model minority, that we have everything that we need to be successful. And so perhaps there's really no, additional need to ask for help or having support to move through our careers. And I feel like over the last couple of years, we've started to hear so much from the AAPI community speak out, against Asian American hate, and to also raise awareness of the fact that we also need support in order to get to positions of leadership, to have that influence. And so I really, really am just so grateful to hear people like Brian be able to use their voice to speak out about these topics and to help all of us really think about what does it mean to be successful. So I truly, thought that his message just really resonated with me so much. And I think there's so much of these different topics that we can have as a community to enable all of us to realize that it's not just us, you know. And I think going forward, having these conversations together is really going to be the way that we can really make an impact and move forward as the AAPI community.
Very well said, Julie.
Yeah. So I think, you know, with all of these different talks today, we're going to hear about all these various topics related to our identities, career development, mental health. We're just getting started, right? And
absolutely.
And I think the next speaker that we have is going to really help us continue thinking about how do we really get to this position of leadership, leveraging our identities as AAPI. And so I think we can move on to the next speaker, which I have the honor of introducing. This next speaker has had an illustrious 20-year career in higher education administration, and he's mentored students in both the United States and in international settings. A dynamic speaker, he has been invited to speak at universities from coast to coast and even at TEDx. He also leads an impactful nonprofit, and I will let him tell you all about the details of this nonprofit. This speaker is Shane Carlin with his message titled, How to Network to Move Through the Pipeline to Leadership. Shane Carlin, please take it away.
Hello, my name is Shane Carlin. I'm the president and CEO of Asian Student Achievement. We're an organization to help move Asian and Asian Americans through the pipeline to leadership. And that's why I'm doing a speech on networking, because too many times Asian and Asian Americans don't have the soft skills to truly be competitive with the dominant culture. And in fact, I think I just said, my name is Shane Carlin, but it sounds Irish and I have this Korean face. And the reason why I bring that up, it's because that's my brand. So with that said, when you're thinking about networking, the first thing I want to recommend is that you find and develop your own brand. And one of those things is my brand in terms of my identity as an Asian American adoptee, and also someone who understands the plight of what Asian and Asian Americans go through. The second part of the networking presentation that I'd like to talk to you about is clean up your social media platforms. Make sure that you look good online. It's very important that there are so many people out there that are looking at you, and especially when you're searching for jobs, as someone who has actually hired people, sometimes I will look on LinkedIn to see what their social media platforms are, or even Instagram or Facebook, especially if it's public. And if it is, what happens is, if you have something that's not unprofessional, or I should say not professional, then it could really make it a bad difference for you, and you may not get the other job. So the other thing I want to talk about is build your relationships offline. It's really important that you really network with people. And let me give you a good example. When I was with the National Association of Student Personnel Administrators, I was on the Regional 4 East Board doing fundraising just for free. And I was volunteering on that board, and I had been fundraising for 3 years straight. And the executive director of the National Association came to me and said, would you be willing to be the first ever director of corporate and foundation relations for them? That experience, having that network offline, truly helped me to get this opportunity that most people would not. So it's really important that you do that. But let me recommend something. Just because you make networks offline, it's really important that you stay in touch with them. Stay in touch with them either 6 months or a year, annually or semi-annually. Because if you do want to ask them for something or want to partnership with them, you want to make sure that you don't look like that you're trying to use them for things. So you don't want to have 4 or 5 years away from contacting them and then you ask them a favor. So in the networking, for example, one of the things you can do is send birthday messages, congratulate them on new job opportunities or changes, or their anniversaries. So different things like that could be very helpful. The other opportunity that I encourage you to do within networking is build your presence and network online. For example, get on LinkedIn. It's really important that you connect with people not only in your profession, but also connect with people that are in your area of interest or your hobbies. For example, being someone who's very interested in Asian American issues, as well as fundraising, as well as nonprofits, I think it's important to make sure that you make those connections in terms of that. Also, I'm on the University of Kentucky Alumni Board, and because I'm an alumni at UK, I also want to stay connected with them. You never know when those online connections can benefit you in the long run, but also you want to make sure it's a two-way street, that you can help them and benefit them too. So those are just a little teaser in terms of what I could offer you for a networking presentation. And if you invite me to your campus or to your organization, I will be assured to let you know that it will be a very interactive networking presentation. So again, my name is Shane Carlin. I'm the president and CEO of Asian Student Achievement. Thank you so much and have a great day.
Wow, thank you so much, Shane. That was really a great talk on a very important topic. I think back to when I started networking and learning about that concept, it doesn't have the best rap, right? People kind of feel like sometimes it's this disingenuous thing where you're trying to ask someone for help. But just as Shane was pointing out, this is not how authentic networking happens. I personally now have found that it's been really fun to just get to know people and reach out and really be able to get to know someone and their stories. And you never know how those people can come back and be able to interface with you later in your career journey. And so I love his points of how to do that networking in a very authentic way, and to also remember to keep up with those relationships. I think during the course of the pandemic, it's been pretty hard for us to really have that connection. And I'm personally have been so excited to be able to go back to in-person networking, but also realizing one of the silver linings of the pandemic has really been able to meet people across the world, even because of the technologies that we have nowadays. And so I thought that was a really great talk. Networking is so important. And I think that the tips that Shane shared with us is going to be really valuable for everyone. Robert, what did you think?
Julie, this one was very personal and timely for me. When he talked about his branding, right? Again, my background has been in academia as a medical sociologist. I started out originally doing HIV/AIDS research, then moving to consulting and doing workshops on issues of race and gender. But as mentioned, I lost my mother in 2021 to the Asian spa shooting. That was a very public event. And through that tragedy, I've had to pivot. And I'm now rededicating my life to amplifying Asian American voices. And again, rebranding myself. Now my identity being both Black and Korean, being on the margins of society, has put me in a position where I have to rebrand myself. And in doing so, through my volunteer work and in immersing myself in the AAPI community, I've met tons of great people. That's actually how I met the founder of NAP is Mandy Shaw. I was attending another event for Asian Americans. And when I tell that story, or I tell my story, it not only connects me with my community, but it builds relationships, right? And that's very important. And that goes back to what our previous speaker said, when not only have to build these relationships, but work towards a collective building, right? And bringing groups together. And so for me, I found by doing this and immersing myself in the Asian American community, I found new opportunities that I would not have found before. And these relationships and this type of work, working on anti-hate, anti-Asian hate, and anti-violence has really allowed me to connect with people that I probably would not have had access to prior. So I really appreciated how you talked about building a network and finding ways to rebrand yourself. So I really felt that message.
Thanks so much, Robert, for sharing your story with us.
Thank you.
I think, yeah, we're going to continue with some amazing talks, but before that, we have a VIP swag raffle that we'd like to conduct, and this is going to be for a book called The Way of the Wall Street Warrior. So the first swag of the day is Bloomberg Best Books of 2021 and a top 10 Amazon bestseller by a speaker that we just heard earlier, Dave Liu. The book provides tips, tricks, and shortcuts to help you build your career for success. It's a humorous and irreverent guide from a 30-year veteran from the Wall Street and Silicon Valley. So can the Speaker Expo statisticians calculate the odds of winning among the attendees and then let us know who's won? Tabulating. All right, I think we have a winner. Congratulations to Ethan Carino of the Grand Valley State University. When you talk about today's event on social media, please remember to use hashtag #FirstClassSpeakerExpo. So Robert, I'll turn it back to you to introduce our next speaker.
Absolutely. Our next speaker is a Cambridge-trained social scientist who also calls UC Berkeley her alma mater. She helps leaders transform their communication and relationship with their team by leading through curiosity. Now, in her message, you would hear the moment of truth when she got a real-life MBA running a Vietnamese language newspaper in Seattle. Now, this experience is what shaped her leadership outlook, and it prepared her to speak to audiences from diverse industries around the world, even in Yangon, Myanmar. The speaker is Dr. Julie Pham with her message, "Practice Curiosity to Lead Better, from my Vietnamese newspaper to the moment of truth." Please get ready for our next presenter, Dr. Julie Pham. Practice curiosity to lead better, from my Vietnamese newspaper to the moment of truth.
At the office of my family's Vietnamese newspaper, shocked that I just kicked a hole into the thin wall. I was so angry. My parents and I had just had an argument about a customer. They were insisting that we should continue advertising for this restaurant even though they hadn't paid us in over a year. I thought we should pull the advertising because I felt that they were taking advantage of our leniency. My parents had been running the newspaper for 22 years by this point. I had been there for 5 months. Child, focus on the American customers and let us take care of the Vietnamese ones, my father gently told me. American meant anyone who wasn't Vietnamese. I was so frustrated because all of my expectations of how American businesses should run were being challenged by my experiences in managing this newspaper that my parents had founded to serve Seattle's Vietnamese community. Now, this was in 2009, and was the start of the worldwide recession and the global decline of the newspaper industry. I had just returned home with a freshly minted Cambridge PhD after being away for 10 years. I had decided to leave academia and to try my hand at business. For the next 3 years, I struggled alongside my parents to survive the recession. It took me over a year of frustrating mistakes and long days of working hard but not smart to finally realize that the problem was me, not our customers. I had to change my expectations. I know now what I didn't know then, which is a lot of my expectations were informed by white male Anglo-Saxon authors who prescribed rigid principles that didn't always apply to the fluid, relationship-based nature of our Vietnamese refugee community. My father would ask me to proofread his emails to prominent community leaders and elected officials. And when I saw these emails, they were riddled with grammatical errors. And yet he had all of these authentic relationships with these people. He showed up for them. They showed up for him. He modeled that investing in relationships and showing up for one another matters more than the eloquence of one's words. To elevate AAPI voices and to transform the public perception of AAPI leaders requires us to recognize that there's no one formula for leadership, that there is no one mold for how leaders sound. My father, along with other refugees new to the US, had to learn how to adapt to different people, to different situations. What working at the newspaper taught me was that leadership is dynamic, it's situational, adaptive, and subjective. Aside from running the business, I also got pulled into community building and bringing together people from very different backgrounds to collaborate. Over time, I saw that people gravitated towards those who took joy in learning and discovery. And then there were those who were fixated on reaching certain outcomes and who were easily disappointed and could bring down the morale of a team. I used to be like that. Then I realized that leadership requires practicing curiosity. I've come to describe curiosity as a practice, not as a trait. Practicing curiosity isn't always easy. In fact, it can be quite difficult, especially when we have to listen and be open to opinions that I vehemently disagree with. Now, practicing curiosity requires a lot of effort. I've identified that it boils down to these three elements. The first is self-awareness. The second, relationship building. The third, clear communication. For the purpose of this talk, I'm going to focus on self-awareness, and I'm going to pose 3 sets of thought-provoking questions that you can ask yourself to increase your self-awareness. The first one, think about when something happens that makes you upset. So for example, someone gives you feedback that you don't agree with. Maybe you want to react by being defensive. Well, it's okay to pause. You could thank them and then say, hey, I have to think about that. And then you can ask yourself, what am I feeling? And why am I feeling what I'm feeling? That's a way to practice curiosity. Here's another way. We talk a lot about respect, especially as it pertains to how leaders lead. Well, you can practice curiosity by asking yourself, where do your expectations of respect come from? Ask yourself, who and what in my personal life have influenced how I think about respect? And here's the final prompt. And this is also related to respect. So ask yourself, what forms of respect matter to me? What forms of respect do I think should matter to me? Think about those respectful actions and behaviors that matter to you so much that you will do them no matter what, even if they don't matter to the other person, even if it's inconvenient for you. You insist on doing it because it's important to how you see yourself, your identity. So what's the difference? Ask yourself, what's the difference between what matters to me versus what I think should matter to me? So these are just 3 sample prompts that you can ask yourself to practice curiosity. And when you ask yourself first, then you can talk to other people about it. I wish I had questions like, what am I feeling and why am I feeling what I'm feeling when I first kicked that hole in that wall? I think it would have helped me process things a lot faster. I would love to share with you other thought-provoking questions as well as ways to practice curiosity as they pertain to relationship building and clear communication when you invite me to your event or to speak on your speaker series.
Wow, thank you. I just want to say that I really like how these presentations are coming together about relationship building and being self-aware. And so I want to remind everyone that if you are curious about any of our speakers today, please look down in the comment section to figure out how you can book our speakers, as well as if you hashtag us today, please hashtag First Class or the Speakers Bureau. Julie, I think you are going to re-up our next great speaker.
Yeah, thanks so much, Robert. So our next speaker, Cecilia Lui, brings more than 30 years of multidisciplinary experience from Canada and the Asia Pacific. Her cultural and professional journeys have led her to her current work in communications and inclusion, supporting organizations and professionals in understanding, adapting, and navigating across differences for career advancement and workplace collaboration. She has taken her work across Asia, North America, Europe, and virtually to Africa and India. As a trainer and speaker, she's often commended for her authentic, insightful, and inclusive speaking style. Today, Cecilia Lui will share how to show up, step up, and speak up to your leadership potential, overcoming cultural misconceptions and stereotypes. Show up, step up, and speak up to your leadership potential. Cecilia Lui.
I was an immigrant to Canada at a young age. After living in the country for nearly 3 decades, I moved back to Asia to reconnect with my roots while pursuing a second career in communication. Over the years in North America and in Asia, I often hear stereotypical comments about Chinese Asians that we're quiet and hard to read that we tend to shy away from speaking up and are easy targets for bullying. We lack social skills and are weak at asserting ourselves. We also lack leadership abilities to rise to the top because we're better doers than leaders. Of course, stereotypes are often formed from common observations. They are there not without reasons. Several years into my career in the corporate world, I recognized how my Chinese Asian persona would hold me back from where I wanted to go with my professional aspirations. How was I going to transform from a socially awkward introvert who lacks communication and relational abilities to someday be able to comfortably and confidently speak in front of crowds or talk about myself while networking with strangers? My journey to becoming a more effective and expressive communicator was not an overnight success, but taking small steps every day. My journey to my current work in consulting, corporate training, coaching, and teaching communications and intercultural work wasn't a linear path, but through ongoing discovery and exploration of my abilities, potentials, and the needs of societies. Becoming an effective communicator was something I had long aspired since a young age. The communications dynamics within my family growing up negatively impacted me for a long time. Words have power, they can kill, or they can inspire. After working on my communication skills for years in becoming the communicator I am today, I'm very mindful how my words and actions may impact others. Living in Hong Kong in a relationship-oriented culture, I also had to learn to network at corporate and social functions, something foreign and uncomfortable to me in the beginning. But it was something I knew I had to push through and get better at. Networking actually helped me become less fearful in public speaking, and I'm thankful that I continued to put myself out there over the years, pushing my discomfort, creating and accepting opportunities, learning to promote myself, and not be discouraged by setbacks. These don't come easy for those of us who've been culturally raised with a mindset to play the humble tune, to not talk about ourselves or our accomplishments. It's very obvious that these cultural values no longer work in today's society anywhere. If you want to increase your visibility at work, or if you're an entrepreneur, this is something you need to get comfortable with. My first leadership experience was in my late 20s when I became a first-time parent. 2 years later, I also became a single mom. Asian parents indeed have been stereotyped, and there is definitely global misconceptions about single moms not being able to do everything on their own. I raised my daughter working full-time for many years until she left for college. But that's another topic for another day. It's common that Asian parents do too much out of love, fishing for their kids instead of empowering them to learn how to fish, micromanaging how they think or do certain things, and making decisions on their academic or career choices instead of guiding or allowing them to pursue what they want or encouraging them to think freely for themselves, and many others. I recognized some of these traits in my own family as a young mom and understood how these common practices could potentially weaken our children. As a single mom, I wanted to raise an independent child so she can be more self-reliant without me needing to be there all the time. My own family dynamics definitely gave a lot of insights into how I wanted to change things for the next generation. The leader I wanted to become relied heavily on the communicator I also become, as we lead through what we say and how we act. Just because we were born or raised one way, we don't have to live with what doesn't work. Does that sound like leadership development to you? There's a lot of parallels between being a leader at work and a leader at home. If we don't consciously think about how we approach either, we will do what's most natural to us. And sometimes it's neither effective nor is it in anyone's best interest. Living abroad has been a great opportunity for self-discovery. Today, I apply my cultural lens on all things I see and do and support organizations, professionals, parents, and youths in understanding the role cultural and personality differences play in our communication and leadership abilities. How have you been showing up in your own development in becoming the leader you're meant to be? How would you need to step up with actions to make changes that will help you succeed? Is speaking up about situations or pushing back on people whose behavior is negatively impacting you something you may need to muster up more courage in? Join me in my leadership program, Show Up, Step Up, Speak Up, where we will explore the connection between the cultures and the subcultures I call our cultural DNA that have shaped or influenced us into the person we are. We will identify the skills and attributes we need to develop and the things that we need to acknowledge about our environment and ourselves, and find ways to adapt and navigate while discovering our leadership potentials. And for the leaders who work with a lot of APIs, how might gaining knowledge and working with culturally diverse teams can benefit you from cultivating more collaborations or becoming a more effective leader at work? Whether you're tuning in to the expo for your own professional development or you're sourcing a speaker for work, this program will be tailored for your employees based on their challenges and needs. Don't let culture conditioning or your personality make you think that the way you speak, act, think, or behave, it's something you can't do anything about. We can set out to become anything we desire with a self-belief that we can, we must, and we will become the leader we aspire to be. Thank you. I hope you've enjoyed the Speaker Expo. Enjoy the rest of today's sessions.
Thank you so much, Cecilia. That was really an inspiring talk. I love her message of pushing through those discomforts, because I also have personally felt that a lot of the transformative experiences I've had were ones where I really pushed myself out of my comfort zone, taken some risk, and really be able to connect with those out there who, have some amazing experiences to also share with us. Robert, what did you think about that talk?
Again, I do. I think about my mother and how she would say, keep your head down and just do well at work. But again, when we were thrown into the spotlight, I feel like I was called to step out and step up and speak up. And I was encouraged by the response from the AAPI community and others, because they would often say things like, you are articulating what we can't say or how we feel, or we empathize and sympathize with you. So I realized that it was more than about my mother and about the other victims, but it was about a larger community. And so I really like how Cecilia talked about stepping up and speaking up. And now I find myself being a leader on this front. And so from that, I really picked up from that. So now we're really excited about our next transformative message, making its worldwide debut here at First Class. The speaker is an acclaimed photographer who creates impactful visual narratives. Now, having experienced firsthand the harm of inaccurate representation in US media, he takes great responsibility in accurate storytelling, particularly focusing on people of color and women leadership. And he is meticulous about what narratives are told in images, in particular through body language. How do you control your own narrative through body language and enhance DEI around us? Christopher Huang will share how to lead through the body language lens, a professional photographer's visual guide. Please help me welcome Christopher Huang, Lead Through the Body Language Lens, a professional photographer's visual guide.
I grew up knowing how frustrating it is to have Asian and Asian American stories told inaccurately in a dehumanizing manner by a media and entertainment industry that is white male dominated. Experiencing this motivated me to tell these stories more responsibly, to take control of my own narrative, as I didn't want to see others experience what I had to, and it contributed greatly to my development of more empathy for other misrepresented groups of people. I have photographed leaders in a myriad of industries, and I photographed countless DEI conferences. Although many people know how to talk about the importance of DEI, a basic step that still isn't as common as we'd like it to be, and there is still this inaccurately harmful framing of it as charity, not something that brings value. One thing that has been missing is the body language of DEI. I consistently see white men at C-suite levels, even those who talk about the importance of inclusion, not show inclusion in their body language, often making people around them uncomfortable and closing communication channels. Take a look at this study. White male workers respond poorly to women and racial minorities in power and take it out on colleagues. This probably wouldn't be surprising to women and people of color. I see this consistently in body language, especially when photographing. Although from my observations, it's more consistent with white men, other groups of people do this too. In my talks, I give practical and tangible tips on improving your body language. What we should strive for is effective, empathetic executive presence and leadership, while promoting equity and inclusion with body language, combating racism, sexism, and other forms of dehumanization and marginalization. That is all part of being an effective leader. Here's one example that shows good leadership. And despite being bombarded by images of white men with their arms crossed, not showing interest in listening as examples of quote-unquote leadership, active listening is crucial to good leadership. Women of color, because they typically have to experience both racism and sexism, develop crucial skills of empathy. Conversely, and I'll just put it this way, the amount of time that I need to wait for a photo with this much active listening when white men are involved is significantly higher. There are several options to benefit from my expertise. For those organizations comfortable with this idea, I could photograph a collaborative part of a conference or a training, then later in the day or the next day, be a surprise presenter, pointing out the good and bad of body language of the actual people there. Seeing the images captured in sequence to see when the active listening happens is very beneficial to creating self-awareness of body language. I can also present the information using a combination of images that I took and images that I didn't take. Depending on the comfort level of the organization, I can do this training without explicitly talking about race, while still talking about the goal of inclusion and getting the important points across. However, it is my hope that more people will be willing to have more direct, intentional, and explicit conversations about the role of race, gender, and socialization. The focus of how this is done, and specific targeted goals, outcomes, changes depending on whether my audience is primarily POC or white, and changes depending on gender. However, the underlying principle is the necessity for people to allow the best ideas to be shared. That is what inclusion is. If you have a bunch of diverse people in a room, but the overrepresented white men in charge, for example, never make them feel comfortable sharing any ideas, then that will be a toxic culture wasting away talent. Here's a photo from the website of a major consulting and accounting company. Our people are our greatest asset, yet the focus of this image is the white people, and the black person is out of focus and obscured by this contradictory text. How would a person of color react to seeing images like this in company branding? This topic could be discussed as part of a training for people at your organization in charge of marketing and/or the leaders who shape company culture, but it's also important for every employee to be aware of the imagery that surrounds them and what messages they send and what messages get internalized in company culture. I share the key to being a responsible storyteller while ensuring that what you're saying with your body language and the images in your or your company's branding matches what you want to be saying. I frequently see a huge disconnect in messaging. For example, a company who talks about the importance of DEI but presents only images like this. These white people aren't even letting this black woman see what's on the phone. How many people signed off on this ad? How is this representative of the kind of culture at this company? This is clearly not inclusion, but there is a black woman, so some would argue it's diversity. And this was on the front page of Facebook. From a personal standpoint, sharing some of my own experiences of what it was like to photograph the icons that helped inspire me to pursue this career adds a motivational resonance with audiences. It's crucial to take control of our own narratives, and doing so inspires others to do the same. To briefly explain the origins of these talks, my clients trust me with creating images for their marketing, online and physical presence, and other uses that represent their brand well. They appreciate my attention to detail in DEI narratives, power dynamics in images, and aligning what they convey with what they hope to convey. But this is very subtle, and the positive effects of these images might not result in a direct and immediate awareness. I made a deliberate decision to be more direct, explaining what I do with capturing these dynamics, and that's what led to these workshops and keynotes. I look forward to working with you to create a more inclusive, equitable, empathetic, and aware culture.
Wow. Again, as a sociologist, I'm often cognizant of how we present ourselves, the representation of self, right? But I really picked up on how you talked about the intersectionality of our race and our gender, our religion, and how we have to be mindful of how that is reflected visually, right? And how we open ourselves up to others. So that was a very different and unique way of framing that. And so I'll be really excited to talk to him more. What did you think about that, Speaker Julie?
Yeah, as I was watching that video of like seeing all those photos that Christopher was showing, I just, couldn't help but realize, yes, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And I think Christopher Huang is really there to bring in that perspective, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I really appreciate the work that he's doing to highlight that aspect and making sure that message is coming across the way people want it to be coming across. So thank you so much, Christopher, for that amazing talk. And I am honored to introduce our next speaker, who is a nonprofit executive whose leadership is enriched by over 28 years of corporate leadership experience at a leading insurance company. Through effective communication, she's led up to 600 employees in multiple locations, managed 1,000 contract employees, and supported customers and agents in 23 states. She's also a certified coach and collaborates with countless companies around career and leadership development. The speaker is Suzie Bao, who will share the art of influencing others through effective communication. The art of influencing others through effective communication. Suzie Bao, please take it away.
Hello. My name is Suzie Bao, and I'm honored to be part of the 2023 NAP Speakers Bureau Expo. A little bit about me. I came to the US from South Korea when I was 8 years old, and I was adopted by my aunt. She came to the US to earn her master's and PhD. She was in academia all her life and shared with me her successes and challenges as a college professor. She shared effective communication is an important way to shape people's perception of you and your work. Little did I know how profound that was at the time. So today, I want to share my passion around effective communication in business settings. With over 30 years in being a leader in a Fortune 40 company and in the nonprofit world, I have learned so much about this topic from my mentors, peers, and sponsors. I will share 3 ways out of 15 ideas you can use communication to be effective in business settings. Number 1, commit to yourself. You will speak up at least once in each meeting. This could be in form of an idea, a question, or potential solution, depending on the context. Sometimes, if we're in a room of senior leaders, we're hesitant to speak. But if you're at the table, you were invited for a reason. So get your voice out. So 1 thought per meeting. Second, use powerful questions as a way to engage others. When I was in school in Korea, we were rewarded for knowing answers, not for asking questions. In the US, it's different. The higher you elevate, asking the right questions are key. It helps to engage others in a meeting, and it also helps to get better business solutions. Questions can start with phrases such as, what if, how about, or can we think about? You can build yourself up to be a thought leader by using a way of powerful questions. Third, I call the tag-on method. Here's an example. Hey, Mandy, that was a great idea you just shared. I also thought about, in addition to your idea, this idea. This does several things. A, you lifted up Mandy on her idea. You also added your own original thoughts so that you can also share what's on your mind. And also, you've started a potential positive momentum for the group to contribute. People like to know that their thoughts matter and that you heard them. And you just affirmed that for Mandy. So you may have heard of messages growing up such as, keep your head down and work hard and you'll be recognized for your work. Don't speak unless you're spoken to. Oh, and don't talk back to your elders. These messages may be culturally competent, but they are not helpful for the US Western style leadership culture in communication. We need to bust through the stereotypes of Asian Americans and show how viable we are as leaders at all levels. The Ascend study showed Asian Americans are the least likely to be promoted to management. And only 1 in 50 AA and HPI women are in C-suite in corporate America. Now, if we want different results, we have to do something different. And that starts with our own behavior. And mind you, I am aware that there's also support needed at the culture level in corporate culture. I understand, but what can we control? So let's collaborate together and show what Asian Americans can contribute as leaders. We're viable, more than capable of leading ourselves and others. I look forward to connecting with you, and thank you, and have a great experience at the NAP Expo. See you soon.
Thank you so much, Sue-Ann, for that inspiring and very thought-provoking talk. I think that I love the concept of the tag-on method, because really, I think when we communicate, helping to elevate others is such a big piece of making that connection. And so I really will put that into practice, I know, in my next meeting with my colleagues, and make sure that I affirm others' thoughts and be able to help contribute with that conversation. And I really thought that all those topics that she brought up were really, really just fantastic for us to keep in mind as we think about effective communication as leaders. Robert, what did you think?
You know, as we listen to these phenomenal speakers, again, I see the interconnectedness in many of what they're giving us, right? The notion of knowing the answer, that's what we usually been taught. You know, we want to be the smartest one in the room. But right, to seek answers, and going back to our previous speaker about being curious, asking. I know a lot in the work that I do now with anti-Asian hate and bridging communities and finding allies. Sometimes they ask me, what's the answer? And I know and now recognize I don't know the answer. But similar to what she pointed out is I can ask the question, and in asking questions and building upon other relationships, it leads to collaborative thinking. And so that I do know. I do know that the answer is in collaborative learning and is in building unity within groups. So even if I don't have the answer, like this is showing with me and Julie together, we can really accomplish a lot more. And so again, if you're really excited about some of the speakers the way I am, I really encourage you to look in our comments to figure out how you can book them and bring them to your next event. So you can continue on to these conversations, as these are only just a snippet of what these amazing speakers could bring to the table for your event or your corporation.
Awesome. So before we transition to our next session, we have another VIP swag raffle that we're going to conduct, and it's for another mini book called The 7 Forms of Respect. Published in 2022, The 7 Forms of Respect provides a vocabulary to describe what matters to you and to others when it comes to giving and getting respect, to build mutual understanding and trust. This mini ebook introduces you to the 7 forms of respect concept and provides examples that will help you learn about the forms of respect that you would like to give and get. This book is written by our earlier speaker, Dr. Julie Pham. So can the Speaker Expo statisticians calculate the odds of winning among the attendees and let us know who's won? Oh my gosh, now we have the winners. And surprise, congratulations to everyone, because this book is for all the attendees. So when you talk about today's event on social media, please remember to use hashtag #FirstClassSpeakerExpo. So now I'm going to turn it back over to you, Robert, to introduce our next speaker.
No, absolutely. And I want everyone to get ready for our next speaker. He's a rapper, an artist, and an educator who blends high energy performance with history and Asian American identity. He shared his poetry at the Obama White House, and his music has been presented at the National Mall in Washington, D.C. And even more great, his work has been curated by the Los Angeles Department of Cultural Affairs. Our next speaker is an expert on Asian American identity and hip hop culture. He has spoken and led workshops at universities and conventions worldwide. He serves as a communications director at Hate is a Virus. The speaker is Jason Chu on No Roots, No Self, claiming your real and powerful ties to AAPI history. Please welcome Jason Chu, No Roots, No Self, claiming your real and powerful ties to AAPI history.
In our wallets, they thinking we got commas. Really in back pockets, we carrying deep traumas. Hang tied us by our own trousers, seen as outsiders, they used to redline us. Time called us out white and the white scholars. Drove a divide between us and our black brothers. You got admitted to dominant white college, still you ain't valid for most of the white collars. Southeast Asian dark cousins drive down the streets, police radio buzzing. Gaslighted to thinking we made progress, still they killed Christian Hall and said nothing. Not a model, not a monolith. I'm not a pawn for your politics. Yeah, I learned from Gandhi and Dr. King, if the system don't bring peace, we must abolish it. What's up, folks? My name is Jason Chu. I'm a rapper, activist, and educator based in Los Angeles. And today, I'm here to just share a very, very simple idea. That Asian America has a representation problem, but it's not the one you might think. Yes, we're underrepresented in powerful industries like entertainment, politics, journalism, philanthropy, and other arenas that drive the levers of social power. But all the conversation around public AAPI representation actually jumps past an even more fundamental issue. Before I can represent for Asian Americans in public, do I even know what it means to be Asian American? Before I can represent, do I know what it is I'm representing? You see, most often when I hear Asian Americans talk about identity, I hear about family or cultural heritage. For example, my grandmother is Chinese Thai, and she came to this country from Thailand. My parents are first-generation immigrants. They came to the country in the 70s to attend college. My family's ethnic background is Chinese, and so we celebrate Lunar New Year and Mid-Autumn Festival, and we eat mooncakes. This is all great, but none of this is actually Asian American. These are my family narratives, my family's ethnic culture. They're pieces of the Asian American picture, but they're not the Asian American story. And when I confuse my story or my family history or my ethnic culture for Asian American stories, I inevitably fail to represent the diversity of Asian American experiences. Of course, it includes East, Southeast, and South Asians, multiracial folks, adoptees, and everything from first to fifth generation Americans. Furthermore, by overemphasizing Asian cultural heritage, I'm actually playing into the eternal foreigner narrative, as though my family's greatest contributions to the country are what we brought to it from Asia, not the many innovations and contributions they and others in our communities have built right here at home. Asian American representation has to go beyond my family's individual narrative, and it has to go beyond Asian ethnic cultures. Asian American representation has to reflect our communal history in this country. Now, really quickly, show of hands, do you know when and where the phrase Asian America was coined? I don't know if your hands are up or not, but I can tell you for myself, I never heard about it in grade school, high school, honestly, until I took a specific Asian American studies class in college. It was actually a mystery to me. You see, I'd always thought that Asian American was simply descriptive, Asian people in America. But in reality, this simple phrase has a vision and a history tied to it. In 1968, as a wave of student protests rocked the Bay Area, Yuji Ichioka and Emma G, two graduate students at UC Berkeley, gathered students of various Asian ethnicities together at their house. At the time, there was little unity between different Asian communities. Filipinos, Japanese, Chinese, all had different immigration histories and ethnic cultures. Yuji and Emma wanted to bring these communities together to have a unified voice in the fight for justice. They came up with a new phrase. They replaced the outdated and colonialist term Oriental with Asian American, right? It's not a passive descriptor. It's a term actively created and self-chosen by the ancestors who came before us as a way to create solidarity, racial consciousness, and a stake in the campaign for social equity. This completely changes how I see myself in the history of Asian American social activators, social consciousnesses, and social voices, right? It combats erasure. When I know that Asian America is a lineage of 170 years of people who are fighting for their rights, politically, socially, in business, in the boardroom, I know that I'm not the first. Our generation is not the first to be fighting these fights. We are the ones doing it right now. But as we fight these battles, we've got to make sure that we don't play into the erasure of previous generations, right? So often I hear Asian Americans saying, hey, we're fighting for this now. We've been silent for too long. And that's a great, great cause to get behind. But the problem is, by saying we're the first, by saying that we've been silent for too long, we're actually erasing the voices of those ancestors who've been fighting since the 1880s, since the 1920s, since the 1960s, to build Asian America and to build this country and contribute to it. If you want to learn more about these kinds of stories, I always encourage folks to look up The Making of Asian America, a book by Professor Erica Lee. You can learn more at my website, jasonchumusic.com. And before I close out, I've got one more verse grounded in this history for y'all. My cousin on a green card, she hold it close to her chest. Don't know when side eyes turn into public threats. My body tells a story of immigration and theft, exploitation running deeper than the national debt. Yes, cold sweat because they know we got next. Edward Said warned about the rising fear in the West. Started with the posters that they used to paint us as pests. Associated Chinatowns with perils, rodents, and mess. Asian food is delicious. They couldn't compete. So the FDA tried to ban the use of MSG. From Fu Manchu to Dr. Wen Ho Lee. I see history repeats. Asian bodies lying in the streets. They lying on us, so we have to lionize us. They view us with the bias, so the jokes turn into violence. Though my people are not quiet, though they keep trying to silence. Didn't start with the virus. The violence just went viral. Take care, y'all.
Yes, Jason Chu. That was an energetic presentation. I love hip hop culture, and I really like how Jason presented that to us. And again, he's talking about history, right? He's talking about the intersections of our racial history, our ethnic history, but pretty much as well as our history here. So it goes back to our earlier speaker, how she developed from a Vietnamese language shop here in Seattle. And so I really like how he talks about, it's not what we brought over on our boats or in our immigration experiences, but really highlighting what we have done here while we are here as Asian Americans and the diverse group that we are. So I really, really did like that and appreciate that energy that Jason brought to us.
Yeah, that was truly an energizing talk. And I think I really appreciate his message, of knowing our roots to enable us to know ourselves. And I think for me personally, as a daughter of Chinese immigrants, I am really just so amazed at all the things that our predecessors have done in order to give us the lives that we can live today, but also realizing there's still a lot of work that we can do as a community to move ourselves forward. And so I really appreciated his message there about remembering our roots and using that to elevate ourselves and our communities as we move forward with the work that we need to do. So thank you so much for that awesome talk, Jason Chu.
Yeah, absolutely. I also think about, again, knowing history and having a background in academia, is that ethnic studies was born out of the civil rights era, right? It was born out of a collaboration between African-American community and those of us in the Asian American community that really wanted to highlight and continue to educate others. I think about myself, I didn't learn about race as a social construct until I got to college. And that's when it was more than a real lived experience and more an academic presentation. And then I think about what we're going through today in today's society where we can't say gay, and now in Florida, we can't talk about race, that it has no educational value. And so what Jason mentioned about, again, knowing our history, promoting our history, and amplifying Asian American voices to talk about the diversity that lives within us was really resonating with us. So again, if you're interested in hearing more from Jason or any of our other speakers, please, again, look down in our comment section, look toward NAP Speakers Bureau to find out how you can book him for your next event. Julie, who do we have next?
All right, so you will know who the next speaker is before I even finish introducing him. He's an author, musician, activist, and self-proclaimed troublemaker. Best known as the founder and basis of The Slants, which is the world's first and only all Asian American dance rock band, he approaches arts and activism with radical optimism and compassion. In 2017, he won a landmark case at the US Supreme Court unanimously, helping to expand civil liberties for marginalized groups. His work has been highlighted in over 3,000 media features across over 150 countries, including Rolling Stones, Time, NPR, BBC, and the New York Times. Yes, you've guessed it, it's Simon Tam. He will encourage us to focus on being the hero, not creating more villains. Focus on being the hero, not creating more villains. Simon Tam.
What is it about villains that just hooks us? Growing up as a kid who was obsessed with Marvel Comics and Star Wars, I was always excited whenever a new issue of the X-Men featured a battle with Magneto or the Imperial March began playing, because he knew that Darth Vader was about to come on screen. These were not your ordinary bad guys. No, these were the kind of worthy adversaries that raised the stakes because they couldn't be beaten by random chance. Villains of this kind require a hero, a superhero, who will do whatever it takes to win. The very best villains are the ones that we love to hate, but it turns out there's actually a scientific reason why we're drawn to them. According to a study from Denmark's Aarhus University, the lore of villains is rooted in evolutionary psychology. Since the early days of human civilization, we've been drawn to the unknown, even if we're a little repulsed, because early settlements needed a way to keep out those who didn't conform to their social norms. Put another way, the so-called villains who would elicit responses like fear, disgust, or anger kind of tell us who to avoid. It's evolution's way of sorting out those who belong in the tribe and those who do not. But it turns out that some of our evolutionary impulses aren't actually good for us. For example, if I were to indulge in my instinct to eat French fries and ice cream as much as I'd like, it would actually shorten my life. And when it comes to fear, what evolution has taught us can sometimes be a little bit off. I mean, think about it. Many people are afraid of snakes, spiders, and sharks, despite the fact that there are so few deaths from them. But most people are not deeply afraid of cars, even though vehicles cause over 1.35 million deaths per year. Not only does this natural instinct to create villains focus on the wrong targets from time to time, but other people can also deliberately take advantage of this impulse in order to lead us astray, from selling us unnecessary products and services to fueling political divide for ulterior motives. We know that fear is an effective motivator, but our obsession with villains is also slowly making us forget something even more important: why we need heroes to begin with. When I talk about being a hero, I'm not talking about the kind of person who's willing to take down the bad guy. I'm talking about the kind of person who's willing to do what is needed in order to save the day. The courage to do what is right while abiding by values, especially when things get tough. That's a real hero in my book. When you look at it from that lens, you'll start seeing why we need heroes to begin with. To lift up the marginalized, to support the best ideas, and to solve for the kinds of conditions that create villains to begin with. You see, real heroes assess what the collateral damage is and who's paying the price for something. If it's going to hurt too many people on the sidelines, well, the hero knows that a different plan of action is going to be needed. In your own life, this means being willing to look at the impact and not just the intention for an action. It means reevaluating our processes in addition to the result. In comic books and in real life, the best superheroes are not always the fastest or the strongest, but they are the ones who consistently prioritize the good of other people, even if it means that they risk getting hurt themselves in the process. I believe that the dividing line for what makes a hero when it comes to sacrifice is this: a real hero is willing to kill their own pride if it can mean saving other people. They're willing to admit when they're wrong. So when you're thinking about a more just world. This means that we will need more brave spaces than safe spaces. It means being willing to let go of traditions or systems that might contribute to the pain of others. Real heroes don't see other people as the enemy. They identify the conditions that can create villains: ignorance, poverty, and the lack of opportunity. Heroes will move upstream and address the root cause and not just the symptoms of injustice. It's been said that evil triumphs when the good do nothing. But I'd add a caveat to this, that evil also persists when the heroes are too busy fighting the wrong things. When I got deeper into the world of comic books, I also learned more about complexity. I saw that Magneto wasn't actually evil. He was a good man who occasionally did bad things. But more importantly, when others like Professor X saw that they could use their shared values to do good, they were unstoppable in their quest to bring dignity to all people. And ultimately, it was actually Darth Vader who defeated Emperor Palpatine, not Luke Skywalker. But it was Luke who activated Vader's empathy by extending compassion himself. That's because heroes recognize that the real victory doesn't come from defeating their foes. It comes from helping others find the hero inside of themselves. Yes, evolution has programmed our minds to focus on villains, but here's the wonderful thing about that. Evolution literally means to change. We can willingly adapt. We can evolve. We can choose to focus on systems to defeat rather than people. And we can do so while abiding by our values. That's our superhero power. And as Uncle Ben told a young Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. So that's your charge today. Be the hero that you were meant to be. Thank you.
Wow, that was a really great and thought-provoking talk. Thank you so much, Simon Tam, for that. As someone who grew up with watching a lot of these different comic books, I can see how so many of the stories can really lead to these lifelong lessons of really how to be a hero, and not in the traditional manner that we think of being the one that's out there fighting the evil, but those unsung heroes, the ones who try to understand the foes and try to really connect with them on a level so that we can make progress and change the ways that we actually experience the world. And so I thought that was a really great message from Simon. And we can really all take a lot of those lessons in our own lives as leaders in the AAPI community. Robert, what did you think?
No, absolutely. So I'm not a comic book fan, so I didn't relate there. But what I did relate to was this notion of hero and villain, right? How it's always good to find a villain, but it's sometimes harder to find a hero. And similar to what Simon said, I think the heroes are the courageous amongst us, right? They're the leaders that are speaking today, and they're the leaders in our community. And so when we think about that, and then when I think about the work that I do now in charging against the status quo, I can't have my heart in hate. I have to, again, push against the bad boogeyman, but to Simon's point, get to and collaborate with others to find the underlying conditions that allow for this type of hate to exist, right? That allows for this ignorance to persist. And so those are truly the heroes that we see. And so I think those are the bridge builders. Again, we see this notion keep coming through in many of our speakers about how we can connect with other heroes and how we need to uplift them rather than highlighting the negativity or the hate that exists in our communities. Despite the hate that we see in a crazy world, one thing that I've learned from my personal story is the love that exists out there, the desire, that the want, people wanting to do better, learn more, and to come together. So I really appreciated Simon's presentation today. And so this has just been an amazing time. And again, hashtag first class, hashtag Speakers Expo, and let's continue to go where we are with our future speakers. Now, armed with 300 hours of formal education in equity, diversity, inclusion, and accessibility, or EDI&A for short, our next speaker leads the implementation of strategic initiatives across Canada, both within her organization and externally with clients. She is currently the co-chair and founding member of the organization's EDI&A committee and its business resource groups. She acts as a mentor for the company's reskilling programs that target underrepresented talent pools. Now, this can include underskilled, uneducated persons, women, as well as disadvantaged youth. Did I mention she also serves on the leadership team of NAP Toronto chapter? Now, this next effective EDI&A executive is Juliet Turpin. She will share with us EDI&A opportunities within today's talent pool. Please welcome our next speaker, Juliet Turpin, EDI&A opportunities within today's talent pool.
Hello, I'm here to share with you 2 opportunities that exist for companies today to future-proof our businesses by expanding talent pools and co-creating pathways to innovation, specifically here in Canada and the United States. Let me start by first sharing with you a part of my story. I'm a second-generation Korean Canadian. My parents immigrated to Canada in 1969 to a small town in British Columbia, which today is infamous, unfortunately, for the discovery of 182 unmarked graves of Indigenous children, called Cranbrook. The town had 12,000 people at the time, with the last residential school closing down in 1970, the year that I was born there. We were the only visible minorities in town, as Indigenous people we know now were purposely hidden in the community. The reason that I refer to this part of my story is just to provide some of the context for the environment at the time and why my parents may have raised us with the mantras they did. Stand out for your brain, not your looks. Keep your head down and don't stand out. Failure is not an option. Don't make waves. Work harder than others, you are no one special. These words, they ring in my ears even to this day. They are ingrained into my very programming. The same way that my Canadian friends' parents' words may ring in theirs. Words that I loved to hear when I visited their homes. You can be anything you want to be. Take on challenges, and the most important thing is, you are happy. You are beautiful. It's not about winning, it's about trying your best. You are special. The differences in these messages, while they're not unique to me, while no one story can represent an entire group of people, I will say that many of my friends and colleagues have shared that they have similar mantras programmed into them. So how do these messages affect an individual's potential? And how does intergenerational messaging affect a generation's potential? And how does this affect the world of work? Today, I will share with you 2 possible starting points, broken rungs and programming. First, it starts by identifying broken rungs. You see, I see firsthand companies that are trying to create equity through well-intentioned plans of hiring racialized people under the moniker BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, People of Color, with special emphasis on Black and Indigenous people and the homogenization of people of color. As important as this is, for the majority of organizations and even communities, these are realistically long-term strategies. Strategies that target mechanisms like early education, branding, attraction, and reconciliation, versus looking at the overlooked talent pools that exist in our communities and organizations today. For many organizations in North America, there are clear broken rungs or missed opportunities in the homogenization of the Asian demographic. Considering that Asians are one of the largest demographics in the world of work, and for Canada, the largest source of immigration, this is a crucial missed opportunity. To illustrate this, we can look at the technology sector, where there is clear overrepresentation of Asian people at the field level and a clear underrepresentation at the leadership level. In this sector, we can see that we need more Asian people in leadership today to help us co-create those very same architectures to identify systemic barriers. This is because in true inclusion and belonging, diversity needs to be a part of creating structures for any real momentum or meaning. This means more diversity of leadership at all levels, especially in the creation of talent architecture, is required. This brings us back to my second starting point, which is programming. For individuals, especially for those of us sitting within companies and ERGs, we can choose to take an active part in identifying opportunities too. We can do this a few ways. We can look at career progression at our own companies. Examine, could there be a bigger opportunity for you to make an impact? If not, why not? When discussing the removal of systemic barriers in our groups, is there diversity at the table? What senior role models exist in marginalized groups and communities that you could learn from or take part in? And how has your personal story affected you or how others perceive or pursue promotions and riskier opportunities? In summary, there are obviously more initiatives that I recommend to both individuals and organizations. There are no silver bullets. However, becoming aware of broken rungs that exist in our companies and looking at how our own programming impacts inclusion and the creation of talent architectures, well, they're two really good starting points. In my conversations, I take 30 years of experience and expand on how we can logically co-create more pathways to enable not only our marginalized communities, but everyone. Grabbing these opportunities enables us to meld our current and future generations, programming at home and at work with new blended programming that builds and includes with mantras like, you are special because you are unique. If you realize your full potential, you will find true happiness. Stand out, you are beautiful. Make waves, make mistakes. Failure is the fastest way to learn. You are no more important than the next person, but you are special. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Julia. Again, there is no lacking in our talent pool today for the speakers that we have. I'm truly amazed and proud to be a part of NAP, and very much thank Mandy for putting this on. And so I just wanted to take the opportunity to again, hashtag us at First Class, hashtag us at Speakers Expo 23. And again, if you are interested in more of what Juliet has to bring to the table, as well as any of our other speakers, feel free to look in our comment section to find out any information. Julie, I think you're going to introduce our last speaker before we get into our MC change. So I want to make sure I turn over the floor to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Robert. So the next speaker is a man of faith, a tech entrepreneur, and a football fan. And he's also the winner of Chicago's 2022 Impromptu Speaking Championship. He's proud of his Nigerian heritage and for being an Asian ally. This speaker is Herbert Oba Jr., who will talk about how public speaking helps develop allyship. And get this is going to be 100% impromptu, a speech that he's made outside of a Starbucks. Herbert Oba Jr., over to you.
You're probably wondering, what is a Black man doing on an Asian Alliance video? I'm about to tell you why this Black man is on this Asian Alliance video. It's because I am an impromptu speaker. Now you ask yourself a question, how is impromptu speaking and a Black man on an Asian Alliance video connected? The reason that these two things come together in impromptu speaking is the glue, is because impromptu speaking, it's what broke down the barriers between me and Mandy Shaw, the Black Asian barrier. Number one, impromptu speaking, the value it brings. It allows you to get uncomfortable, putting yourself on the spot. The one example that happened between me and Mandy Shaw was I took the opportunity to speak out to her and say, "Hey Mandy, what is it that you do?" And she gave her response to me. Me and Mandy Shaw are part of a public speaking society. A society that uses communication that disrupts the barriers, the relational barriers, and produces allyship. Impromptu speaking in this realm also gave me the opportunity, which was number 2 on the list of how impromptu speaking can build allyship, was the opportunity to be able to speak on the fly and to be able to use the impromptu speaking to then go into a deeper conversation. That is competing. You see, impromptu speaking gives you the ability to take what's around you and to compete with it. When me and Mandy Shah was able to take the next level of public speaking and compete, we were able to, I would call Mandy and encourage her. Hey Mandy, we can do this. We can make it to the next level. And it was by speaking spontaneously and being able to encourage on the spot, on the fly, that allowed us to reach great heights. The workplace can be a place of rigidness, competitiveness, and not being able to really work as allies. But through public speaking and impromptu of what I do best, it allows you to break down those barriers in the workplace, the rigidness, to be able to ask the deeper questions, to be able to take information that you gathered, such as the Chinese calendar. It was through the opportunity of impromptu speaking that allowed Mandy to tell me about, it was the year of the tiger, which helped to break down the cultural barriers, and we were able to relate with one another because I love tigers. I feel I am a tiger. And it made us to be able to have a deeper relation in that. The impromptu speaking that I want to be able to give to you and give you that value is something that can be beneficial to all employees in a workplace. And that's to get away from the toxic work culture and to move into a paradise of a culture, a work culture that works together, that's cohesive, that's organic, that has difference, but that difference actually energizes the workplace. And that's the value that I can bring to you. And also, on top of that, through that opportunity that me and Mandy has to be able to communicate with one another, she's been able to give her privilege to me as an ally and to help me with my virtual presentations. Her wisdom in that area could not have been done without the communication skills that we've built. So in closing, I want to be able to bring you forth through this training to make you an incredible impromptu speaker, to break down barriers, and to build allyship. Please come, join us on this conquest.
Wow, that's amazing that it was all done impromptu there. Thank you so much, Herbert, for that awesome talk. I think today's theme of really speaking up and raising our voices to share our stories has really permeated through all of our talks. And this idea of really using impromptu speaking to connect with others on that deeper level, to have these conversations is a really great skill. So if you're interested in learning more about Herbert Ova Jr., please look at the chat for further information on how to connect with him. Robert, what did you think? Do you have...
Yeah, just quickly, again, when I hear that allyship, it's very important to me about bridge building, but I also hear sharing, right? Sharing your story and engaging with others. Some of the work that I do is with the Jewish community. I'm not Jewish, nor have I had a background with working with Jewish people, but I found a connectivity through anti-Semitism and rising against hate. And so from that connection, we were able to become allies where we support each other. I show up and support their events, and they're very helpful and supportive of me in my events. And what brought us together was not our religion nor our race, but rather our fight against hatred and being marginalized on the community. So this allyship is really important. And again, the speakers that we come together and have today, I hope to meet many of them to build on that allyship and expand my own network. And I assume the same is with you, Julie.
Yeah, for sure. I'm so excited to further continue our conversations with so many of the speakers from today. So excitingly, we have another VIP swag raffle, and this is going to be for the infinite possibility of allyship workshop. So this is going to be a special raffle for a workshop. This is a 50-minute allyship program that presents the theoretical foundation, real-life case studies, and cross-cultural communication strategies. And interestingly, this is going to be delivered by Herbert Ova Jr., who you just heard, and his ally, Mandy Shaw, our founding director of the Speakers Bureau. So without further ado, can the Speaker Expo statisticians calculate the odds of winning among the attendees and let us know who's won this awesome workshop? All right, I think we have a winner. So congratulations to Yasmin Osborne of the Hertz Television. So remember, when you talk about today's event on social media, please use the hashtag First Class Speaker Expo. Thank you all so much. Congratulations.
Now, on behalf of all first class speakers, founding director Mandy Shaw and NAP, I want to thank you so much, Julie, for serving as a master of ceremonies today, making me feel comfortable and doing an amazing job introducing our presenters. Today, you were truly first class, and thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much, Robert. This was such a fun event to work alongside you to introduce our speakers and to connect with our audience here. I am just so delighted to be able to be part of this first ever AAPI-centered Speaker Expo. I hope to connect with so many of you out there to continue our conversations and how to elevate the voices of the AAPI community. Please reach out. And thank you so much, Mandy and the NAP team, for putting together this amazing forum for all of us to be together and hear the stories and experiences of the AAPI community.
Again, thank you again, Julie. It was so much a pleasure working with you. Now, to close out our event today, with me, I have my other master of ceremonies, Isa Kujawski. She's a functional registered dietitian. Isa connects nutrition with mental well-being to help chronically stressed individuals rebalance their mind and their body. After serving over 10 years of active duty in the US Navy and losing her veteran brother to suicide, Isa has found a way to dedicate her career to helping people use food as medicine to unlock their highest self. Isa has helped hundreds of people, including veterans with traumatic brain injuries and PTSD, individuals with depression and anxiety, and she's even helped ex-NFL players with post-concussive injuries. Please help me welcome Isa.
Thank you so much, Robert. I'm so pleased to partner with you and make history together with everybody, and I'm so excited to see what's in store with some of our next speakers today. And so I'll roll right into introducing our next speaker. I have the pleasure of introducing the speaker that opens the mental health, wellness, and health equity issue topic of the Expo. She is born and raised in Toronto, a podcast host, a serial entrepreneur that sees opportunity everywhere. I love that. In her experience owning and managing her own business, a specialty salt for margaritas, she hopes to encourage others to create their own personal brands and normalize all of the transitions and transformations that come with career and life. She has titled her message, the unexpected value in abandoning the plan. So please help me welcome Ms. Amy Chen.
My parents taught me that you have to make your own opportunities in life. They immigrated to Canada from Taiwan with no network, no jobs, and barely able to speak the language. Nothing was set up for them. They wanted it to be different for me. They signed me up for everything, from piano lessons to ballet, from art classes to grammar school. They even held household math and stock trading competitions between my brother and me. That taught me two important lessons. One, money is the ultimate goal in life. And two, you have to win in order to be worthy. This made me feel pressure to succeed in the corporate world as well as, if not better than, my brother. But I couldn't keep a job for long. Not because I wasn't qualified, but because I wasn't happy with the life my parents set up for me. So I did the millennial thing and I quit my job. I wanted to be in charge of my own success rather than working for someone else. But for my parents, that wasn't part of the plan. To them, worthiness and success came from being employed by somebody else, to be chosen. They worked hard to set up a secure life for me. And that involved getting a full-time, well-paying job where I was the best. So when I started my first company, Salty Paloma, a line of flavored salts from margaritas, they looked at me and were like, "You're gonna create a company based on salts? You don't know how to cook, you don't know how to make cocktails, you don't have any business experience, and you don't have any clients." And I said, "Yup." So with no money, no reputation, no experience, and no support, I started from scratch. To keep some level of security, I needed to create a new plan for myself. I went door to door selling my products at every retailer in town. I set up a booth at every local market. I created brand partnerships to expand my social media following, and I worked at 3 bars to build up my cocktail expertise. I had to be the best. And with every successful milestone, there was a bigger mountain to climb. I had to keep the momentum going because I felt like if I stopped working and stopped making money and stopped building my business, I would disappear. When the lockdown was announced, I was let go from all my jobs at the bar, and I had to cancel and refund bookings for the rest of the year. Not only did the plan fail, but I ran out of all other backup plans. I had no idea what to do next. So I did disappear. I booked a one-way ticket to Mexico, isolated myself in a remote town, and distanced myself from everything, choosing to be worthless. It was the only way I could keep a sense of control. For the first time in my life, I had no schedule, I had no goals, and I had no plan. I learned to look at opportunity differently. Instead of chasing it, I welcomed it with open arms. I have spent my whole life learning how to work. It was only now that I was learning how to live. As much as we think we can set ourselves up for success, inevitably, things will happen that are out of our control. So how do we let go of the idea that creating a plan leads to a successful outcome and allow space for unexpected opportunities to naturally come to us? Here are 3 lessons I learned while I was gone. First, get curious about people. While I was in Mexico, a friend of a friend brought me to the local university, and I was invited to judge a student-led speaking competition. I didn't feel qualified to judge a speaking competition, but I thought it sounded like fun. And I learned something about myself there. After years in a competitive role, chasing the spotlight as the face of a brand, I learned that I love even more to be in a supportive mentorship role. I would have never learned that about myself if it wasn't for this friend of a friend. So get curious about people. Second, give yourself space for opportunities to show up. At the speaking competition, I gave myself time
to chat with the university faculty with no expectations and no goals in mind. I was then invited to speak at a conference where I could share my story about the courage it takes to become an entrepreneur. It really resonated with the audience and moved my life in a totally new direction that wasn't a part of anybody's plan. So first, get curious about people. Second, give yourself space for opportunities to show up. Finally, detach yourself from individual moments. There's a Chinese proverb I admire that says, maybe so, maybe not, we'll see. It basically says that no one moment is a good or bad outcome, but just another moment. If we wait and see, another moment will come along and change our perspective again. A pandemic wiped out my business and brought me to Mexico. A friend of a friend brought me to a student speaking competition. And that led to a career teaching students about entrepreneurship. I don't know what's gonna happen next. And for the first time in my life, that's okay. I understand now why my parents raised me the way they did, because they didn't have access to opportunities. They really did have to create them for themselves. I'm on a similar path now here in Mexico with no network and barely able to speak the language. But I learned that worthiness and success doesn't come from money and winning. When we let go of the need to control the outcome, we open ourselves up to the true gifts of opportunity. The trick is to stay open to receive the unexpected. Because the one thing we know for sure is that nothing ever goes to plan.
Wow, thank you so much, Amanda. And I just want to say, I think I accidentally said Amy Chen when I introduced her, but it's Amanda Chen. Thank you so much for that powerful message. And I just want to remind everybody that you can book this speaker with the Speakers Bureau at speakersbureau@nap.org. So, wow, Robert, I have chills. I don't know about you, but Amanda's journey in her face of adversity, breaking out of the mold that she thought she had to uphold, then having an up and then having a down, and just all of the meandering twists and turns in her journey. I think that her message is so potent, especially for me, because I can absolutely relate to it. And I know you probably can too, Robert, in paving kind of your unique path that you have come to.
Absolutely. Again, welcome, Isa. I really resonated once again with Amanda's story about abandoning the plan. Again, my background is in academia, where I've taught at many universities and conferences, did several presentations on diversity. But when the tragedy happened to my mother in 2021, I had to pivot. And I found myself, again, immersing myself in the AAPI community, and the climbing of the ladder all dissolved. And I found myself in a new space and in a new plan. And I'll tell you a funny story quickly. When my mother wanted me to be a doctor, of course. And when I told her that I finally graduated and got my PhD, she didn't understand because I wasn't a real doctor, she said. I wasn't a medical doctor. But then I told her what a PhD was. And when she came to one of my workshops, and she saw me work, she was in awe. And she was like, wow, you're a thinking doctor. They pay you to think. And so now I think about that and seeing the work that I do now, how I have abandoned that plan. And what I really found is now doing this work, sharing her story and amplifying Asian voices has become some of the most meaningful and impactful work of my life to date. And that is the reason why I really resonated with Amanda's story about abandoning your plan and being open to opportunities and new opportunities. And so that's how I see Amanda telling us to do now. So I was really excited about that.
Absolutely, Robert. Thank you for sharing that story. I'm sure a lot of other individuals in the Asian community can probably relate to, the path of having to become a medical doctor or whatnot, right? So there's a little light in the conversation there, just to bring some lightness to it. But thank you for being so open about, your own tragedy. Same thing kind of with my story of losing my brother to suicide, serving in the military for 10 years and sort of quote unquote abandoning that path to serve in a completely different capacity in the field of mental health and wellness. with what Amanda was saying and kind of your story too, Robert, I can absolutely 100% see how we just have to be open. We have to be open and embrace the unknown, so to speak.
Definitely, right? It goes back to some of our earlier speakers about being curious, being open to, and again, building allyships, networks, and relationships. And so we can have an idea of what we want to be in our career or what we thought we would be on the corporate ladder. But I think many of today's speaker has inspired us to really move forward, activate our agency, right? Present ourselves in the best light and continuously redefine what it means to be Asian, what it means to be Asian at the table, and what it means to be a true leader. And so really, I'm very excited about all of our speakers today. So again, don't forget to hashtag First Class, hashtag Speakers Expo 23. And I know if you are as excited about the speakers as I am, you want to know how you can book them, please feel free to look in our comments section or reach out to NAP Speakers Bureau, and they definitely can put you in contact with many of our speakers. And so our next speaker provides culturally competent mental health and diversity and inclusion trainings among college students and professionals. Now, he has spoken at over 50 universities and Fortune 500 companies nationwide. His personal mental health journey as an immigrant is featured in a short documentary called Coffee, Talking Out of Mental Coffins. And it was included in the Harvard Kennedy School's Asian American Policy Review. Now, this speaker coming up is JR Kuo, presenting his message, we need both DEI and mental health. I can definitely relate. Please help me welcome JR Kuo. We need both DEI and mental health.
The topic that I'm passionate about is the intersection between mental health and diversity, equity, and inclusion. Historically, companies just wanted to provide diversity and inclusion training to check out their HR box. Organizations just want to learn about mental health without addressing cultural considerations. And based on my experience, we cannot address diversity and inclusion without talking about mental health, and vice versa. The biggest word in mental health is stigma. And the biggest word in diversity and inclusion is bias. They are the two sides of the same coin. For example, I used to run a small company of 40 employees. I had witnessed the mental health challenges that some of my project managers had experienced and how it affected their job performance. And due to liability reason, my lawyer told me not to interfere. So instead of addressing the root cause, which it is a mental health challenge, I had to reprimand my project managers and put them on employee improvement plan, which it really worked. Since the tragic death of George Floyd, I've started combining these two important topics into my presentations. And to my surprise, my clients loved it. So racism is a pandemic that has been plaguing us for centuries. Asian American hate crimes have spiked rampantly around the world since COVID-19 started. The hate and discrimination toward Asian Americans didn't just show up from nowhere. In fact, it can be dated back to 1860s when the Chinese came to the United States to build the railroad. The erasure of Asians and Asian Americans from US history texts further perpetuates the model minority myth that stipulates Asian exceptionalism. This exceptionalism narrative complicates the traditional black and white racial discourse of civil liberties and social justice at the expense of Asian and BIPOC communities by falsely describing Asian communities as intrinsically smart and considerate. Therefore, we are immune to systematic racism, class inequality, and social injustice. In the workplace, model minority myth simultaneously strangulates the Asian community into being perpetually handicapped compared to white counterparts by falsely labeling Asian Americans as passive, self-spoken, and easily pushed over. Therefore, lacking in any significant leadership role, even though we are often being considered and perceived as the best workers. With these different forms of discrimination toward Asian Americans, It shows that our status is conditional. We are either the model minority, the smartest kids that are good with math, go to Ivy League university, the best employees, or we are the enemy, the virus. It's most like nothing in between. We, the whole Asian population, are often the scapegoats and getting blamed for whatever trivial reasons. We are perpetual immigrants, we're foreigners, even though there are millions of us have been here for generations. So no matter how American we are, it's almost like we'll never be considered American. How often we've been asked, where are you from? No. Where are you really from? How does all this discrimination make us feel? It makes us feel frightened, uneasy, and unsafe. It is a constant reminder that we don't belong here, that we are less than, that we are not worthy the same respect that white folks are afforded. These discrimination keep us off balance, keep us distracted, and keep us defensive. They literally keep us from enjoying a night out in the town or feel safe in the office. The impact to our mental health can be detrimental. According to CDC, people of color that have experienced racial discrimination are 20% more likely to report serious psychological distress, such as depression, anxiety, and trauma. So the big question here is, what can we do? How can we address mental health and diversity and inclusion together? The short answer is to provide practical supports. We don't need to know exactly what to say. We don't need to be the loudest one to advocate for ourselves or for others. What we need to be is the most attentive and adaptive person to our surroundings and situations. It boils down to interpersonal relationship and respecting people's experience, protecting people's voices, and honoring people's dignity. Ultimately, it starts within us. The best way to start is to acknowledge and validate other people's experience and feelings. Instead of telling Asian Americans that have experienced discrimination, it's no big deal, or you'll be fine. What we can do is to literally keep our mouth shut and listen to their experience without judgment, without interruption, and with a simple supporting question. How can I help? All right, thank you all for listening. What I have shared is a part of a serial workshop that I provide to universities, Fortune 500 companies, and community organizations. It is my passion to address mental health and diversity inclusion together, because there's no health without mental health.
Wow. Thank you, JR. That was a great presentation and a great way to start us off and lead us into this conversation. And Isa, you know, I'm impressed by your background of working in mental health and combining it with food. I too am a foodie, and through my trauma, I found comfort in cooking and even a tidbit personal information to commemorate and remember my mother. I didn't want to feel sad all the time, so I actually got a tattoo of kimchi jjigae on my leg to help me. So I understand the bridging up together of mental health as well as diversity and equity and inclusion. So I really like that JR brought that to the table. How about you, Isa?
Yeah, absolutely. And along those same lines, absolutely, food and nutrition can play a role in your mental health. And it helped me a lot too when I lost my brother and feelings of depression and anxiety. But I think what JR does so well is that he takes something that is so real and maybe just sort of vague in the Asian American experience, and he articulates it so well and defines this source of mental health as being so much more than maybe from grief or like a mood disorder, just from our collective journey and experience of being Asian and maybe being perceived or feeling like an other in this society, even when we are American, right? And Robert, I was thinking about you throughout his presentation as well, because I know that these topics are so in line with the work that you do and that in the mission that you have.
Absolutely. Again, I've been impressed and inspired all day. And so I'm very much impressed with NAP and their Speakers Bureau, and very much impressed by all of the speakers that we have today. And so I'll turn it over to you to introduce our next speaker.
Sure. So our next speaker has served numerous women of color across the US and internationally to help them heal from anxiety and from burnout, something that we all feel. She does this through teaching inner work and somatic techniques for regulating the nervous system. She is also an actress, model, casting director, and producer in the entertainment industry. Very impressive. The speaker is Kitty Wu with her message, Healing the High Performer Perception. So please help me in welcoming Ms. Kitty Wu.
When the world looks at API professionals, what do they see? We're often viewed as intelligent, hardworking, competitive, ambitious, and highly driven, the quintessential high performer. These traits are not bad, as Asian culture has taught us to value education and hard work. Yet today, I want to shed a whole new light on this public perception of us, and in doing so, also change how we view ourselves, because transformation starts with healing, and healing happens first at the individual level. Society views us as high performers, often ascribing this identity to our ethnicity or culture. Yet society fails to recognize the deeper pain behind this high performer persona that so many of us have taken on. Let me tell you a childhood story to illustrate what I mean. I grew up in a white neighborhood and went to a predominantly white private school. When I was 6 years old, one day I was sitting in the car line after school waiting for my mom to pick me up. 3 younger white girls were sitting in front of me, and suddenly one of them turns around and starts gesturing at me, pulling her eyes into slits, cruelly laughing. Her 2 friends followed suit, laughing at me. Outwardly, I pretended to ignore them, but inwardly, I couldn't ignore how that made me feel. I felt small, insignificant, powerless, and in that moment, my young mind formed several unconscious beliefs about myself, others, and the world. Most of our unconscious beliefs form by the time we're 7, before we're old enough to fully process our emotions. When we experience significantly painful events during this formative period, we then spend the rest of our lives overcompensating in an effort to avoid feeling a similar pain. So over the years, as I matured into adulthood, I unconsciously shaped myself into the high performer in order to feel seen, significant, powerful, the opposite of how I was made to feel as a child. For years, I pressured myself to achieve more and more, never feeling good enough, to the point where I struggled to rest or slow down. This created a lot of stress and unconscious performance anxiety. Now, your childhood wounds may not look exactly like mine, but chances are you can probably relate to my experience in some way. Have you ever been made fun of for how you looked, the food you brought to school, or the way you spoke? Or perhaps your deepest childhood pain hits a little closer to home. Maybe it was caused by a primary caregiver or another close family member. If you grew up in an immigrant family like I did, chances are you experienced some form of emotional neglect or abandonment. This may have looked like constant criticism, lack of physical affection, lack of words of affirmation, constantly being compared with your peers, or feeling like your value was dependent on your grades and accolades. Now, I'm not saying all immigrant parents do a terrible job of parenting. They likely do the best they can. What I am saying is that it's important to reflect on our childhood, to understand what emotional needs were not met, and acknowledge our past pain. In order to start the healing process, it's also important to recognize what lies we believe about who we are as a result of our childhood wounding. It's usually one of 3 beliefs. Each of these identity beliefs is rooted in our sense of needing something in order to feel loved, respected, and admired. So right now, we're going to do an exercise to help you figure out which of these beliefs you identify with. I want you to close your eyes, take a deep, slow breath in through the nose, and slowly exhale through the mouth. We're slowing our heart rate down. Get comfortable, just relax. Nobody's looking at you or judging you. Keep your eyes closed. As we go along, we're going to practice self-awareness of any physical sensations going on in our bodies as you listen to each belief. You may notice your heart stop or flutter. Perhaps you find yourself holding your breath or feel a pit in your stomach. Maybe your heart gets heavy, or you notice your body tense or stiffen a bit. Whatever the sensation is, allow it to be without judging it. Belief number 1, I am what I have. This might be you if you pride yourself on how much money you make, the material possessions you own, the social clout you have, or your appearance. The issue with this belief is that no matter how much you gain, you will never have enough. Belief number 2, I am what I do. This might be you if you pride yourself on how hard you work, your accomplishments, achievements, recognition. The issue with this is that no matter how much you achieve, you will never feel satisfied. Belief number 3, I am what other people say I am. This might be you if you find yourself constantly worrying about your reputation, if you beat yourself up when you receive criticism, or if you have people-pleasing tendencies. The issue with this is that no matter how much admiration you get from your friends, peers, social media followers, you will never be free of that social anxiety. Now open your eyes. If you have a pen and paper, take a moment to write down which of those 3 beliefs resonated with you most, which felt most true for you. Now take a moment to write down what physical sensations you experience, if any, upon hearing this belief read aloud. Now, if one of these beliefs is resonating with you right now, and you're feeling a bit uncomfortable, it's okay. We're doing a bit of inner work, just like I do with my clients all the time, and it's supposed to feel uncomfortable. It's hard admitting our deepest fears and insecurities. This is one of many self-awareness exercises I use while coaching my clients. Use it anytime you're experiencing any sort of uncomfortable emotion in order to improve your emotional self-regulation skills. Growing in self-awareness and self-regulation is crucial for the healing process, because the more aware you are of how your emotional state affects your physiology, the better you can be at altering your physiology to manage your emotional state. An exercise like this is simply the foundation for that. So no matter whether you're just starting your healing journey now, or you're continuing along the journey that you've already started, I invite you to continue this lifelong inner work process. And I acknowledge each and every one of you for participating today in this work. Because ultimately, this is the only way to foster collective healing within our community, and thus transform public perception.
Thank you so much, Kitty. I actually had the opportunity to cross paths with Kitty a couple of years ago for a completely different random reason, but I can attest to what a brave and lovely young woman that she is and how she has really used her prior wounds that she talked about as a force for good and to help other people. And I can just also feel my nerves kind of going down and feeling more grounded as I did those breathing exercises with her. So just a reminder to everybody, you can book Kitty or any of the other speakers today by checking the comments, speaking or reaching out to nap.org. And please use the hashtags Speakers Expo and hashtag First Class as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Isa. And I really loved how she shared her own personal story, but how she taught us how to think about our past trauma, our personal trauma, and how to make that about self-awareness and how to promote our own selves and showing up when we need to be and really not being so critical on ourselves. So I really look forward to hopefully one day I can cross paths with Kitty as well. Now, our next speaker is passionate about speaking and coaching to empower people to realize their full potential. Let go of the shoulds and be the author of their own life story. And I really feel that because as a certified mental fitness coach, she works with high achieving, ambitious women going through transitions to tap into their potential and bridge the gap between where they are now and where they want to go. Now, even if that destination isn't totally clear yet. Our next speaker is Amy Yip with her message, being seen, being heard, and rocking that boat. Please help me welcome Amy Yip. Being seen, being heard, and rocking that boat.
Don't be seen, don't be heard, don't rock that boat. That's what I've been taught since I was young. So imagine how much I rocked that boat when January 2020, I sold all my belongings, I quit my job at Google, and with just a backpack on our backs, my husband and I took a one-way flight to Ghana. Our plan was that we would volunteer for a few months at a breast cancer nonprofit, then travel the world. It's been a dream of ours. And then that little thing called COVID came along and completely shifted our plans. Borders in Ghana closed, and we ended up stuck in Ghana for 7 months. When borders finally reopened, we decided, well, let's just live and work nomadically. And that's what we did. Oftentimes at this point in my story, people will come up to me and say, oh my gosh, that must have taken so much courage to leave Google and to go travel the world. I wish I could do that. But, and there's always a but I can't right now because I'm at a pivotal point in my career. I can't leave. But I'm at a prime age for starting a family. Can't leave right now. But my parents would never approve. And there's no way that I could rock that boat. And I want to look at everyone in the eye and tell you there will never be a right time for pursuing your dreams. There will never be a right time, no matter what your dream is. And I am no more courageous than anyone out there, because when I had to make the decision, it was also hard. I had a lot of shoulds. My career at Google was going so well, and everyone said, are you bananas? Why would you leave Google? You should just stay. Everyone's trying to get in and you're going to leave. Especially my parents. Amy, what are we going to tell people? What are we going to tell our friends, that our daughter is leaving this prestigious company to go to Africa to volunteer for no money? No, you should just stay and you could donate money to Africa. My parents were aging, and as a good Chinese daughter, I felt like I should be the one to take care of them. And the biggest should of all at the time, I was in my late 30s, and everybody was telling me, Amy, you're kind of getting old and your eggs are rotting, so you should just have babies. And yes, I had people say your eggs are rotting. And my parents were constantly telling me, Amy, you need to stop playing. You need to settle down and be responsible, have kids, start a family. And the thing is, my husband and I, we wanted children. We just weren't ready. We had this dream of ours that we wanted to pursue. So we decided, let's get our embryos frozen. And that's what we did. A year later, I got an email, and it basically told me there was a mishap at the storage facility. So the viability of your embryos are in question. Until you plan to use that, we can't tell you if they're viable or not. And that was when I hit rock bottom. I thought maybe there's something out there trying to tell me that I should give up on this dream and just start a family and do the normal thing. But inside, something still felt off. So I started reading books, hoping for an answer. And I started with reading books because I was taught, as a good Chinese girl, you save face, you don't air your dirty laundry. And on the outside, everything looked great. I had this great job, great husband, great family, friends, right? What more could I ask for? But yet something on the inside felt off. So I quietly read books, book after book after book for 8 months. And I got no closer to an answer of, do I pursue my dreams or do I have babies? My best friend told me about ayahuasca, and she came up to me and said, Amy, there's this thing. It's called ayahuasca. It's supposed to give you clarity. And I said, what? That's exactly what I need. I need clarity. Oh, I need to do an ayahuasca ceremony. And for those who don't know what ayahuasca is, it is a medicinal plant, and there's a shaman and an entire ceremony. And so I flew down to Peru for a 5-day ayahuasca ceremony. I got a lot of clarity on a lot of things, just not the question I had, which is, do I pursue my dream or do I have babies? I returned back to the US, and a coworker told me about coaching. And when he first told me about coaching, honestly, I was a bit skeptical because I've always been taught that if you're smart enough, you can figure things out. So how is this stranger who doesn't even know me supposed to help me figure out what I want in life? But I was desperate and my time was ticking. It was running out. So I hired a coach, and it was the best decision that I made because my coach helped me to peel back the layers of my onion. And I started realizing what mattered to me at my core, what were my values. And I made two decisions at that point. The first decision I made was I need to leave my job. I need to pursue my dream because I will regret it if I don't. And even if I stay, I'm not guaranteed to have kids. I'm not in control of that. And the second decision I made was I want to do what my coach did for me, for others, because it sucked feeling like I couldn't be seen, I couldn't be heard, and I couldn't rock that boat. Throughout my journey, mental fitness is what helped me. Mental fitness is what gave me courage to pursue my dreams. Mental fitness is what helped me to pivot my dreams when I got stuck in Ghana. And mental fitness continues to help me each and every day to be seen, to be heard, and to effing rock that boat. And you can build your mental fitness too by strengthening the three core muscles of mental fitness: the saboteur interceptor muscle, the sage muscle, and the self-command muscle. And that is how you can also rock the boat.
Wow, Amy, I think you just told my story in my mental health and in my boat. There is never a right time. I really am inspired by your story to step out and take a chance, because it's always going to be scary. I have dreams. I would love to write a book. I love to start an organization. And I tell myself, well, when I get done grieving, when I get through my trauma, when I get done with my mental health, then I'll do it. But as I found myself doing the things that I'm doing now, this has been helpful to my mental health and helpful to me getting back there. So I'm really inspired and encouraged by your words today on taking that chance, having those decisions to make, and really, again, focusing on my mental health while also sharing that with others. Isa, what did you think about that presentation?
I loved it. I think a common through line that I'm seeing with a lot of our speakers today is resilience and clarity, right? Tuning out maybe what society has expected of us, or what our families are telling us to do, or what other people are saying about what they think which path we should take, and really tuning into our own wisdom and following our own journey and our own path and finding that clarity for ourselves. So I just so appreciate these messages. I don't know about you, Robert, but I feel like I can really relate to each and every one of them.
Absolutely. And again, I'm hoping that our guests today are really appreciative of the time that our speakers are giving to us. We are appreciative of your time. And again, remember, this is about investing in you. We're glad that you're here, investing in you, learning more about how you can do better in your organization, as well as if you're interested in any of our speakers today, again, don't forget to look in the comment section to figure out how you can book them for your next event, or you can just go straight to speakersbureau@nap.org, and you can definitely hear more about what Amy and the rest of our speakers have to say. Now, Isa, I think you have another speaker for us.
Sure, and thank you for concluding that. Couldn't have said it better myself. So I'm going to roll right into the next speaker, who has dedicated the past 20 years to patient health advocacy in communities of color. With recognition from leading organizations such as the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation and Gates Institute, her areas of scholarship include improving access to primary health care and community-based partnership development. She serves as an appointed DC Commissioner for Asian and Pacific Islander Affairs and is a community family nurse practitioner. The speaker is Karen Kwok, and her message, "Nothing About Us Without Us," to address mental health in the Asian Pacific Islander community, is something we're so excited to hear. So, well, let's welcome Ms. Karen Kwok.
Over my 20 years of healthcare leadership, I witnessed firsthand the vital role mental health plays in our lives, particularly with the physical isolation and the anti-Asian sentiment and xenophobia during COVID. With transforming the public's perception about Asian professionals and health equity, I want to borrow a phrase, "Nothing about us without us," by and for ANHPI communities towards mental health wellness. From this workshop on ANHPI mental health, the takeaways are for every day and in every place, with all of you in personal, work, and community settings. Looking back on your last visit with primary care, were there barriers in your conversation about mental health? How do we avoid becoming another statistic? Or equally problematic, what if you are not counted because Vietnamese, Burmese, and Asians are considered one and the same? For ourselves and our family members, becoming more fluent in mental health needs and partnering with primary care will help overcome the stigma of mental health and address cultural barriers with burnout stressors such as work schedules and failing caregiving. My workshop will cover in detail tips and tools for ensuring primary care is your partner in mental health wellness. In the clinical setting, I infuse mental health education as well as care coordination of specialists and primary care services with psychiatry. This strategy is important in my primary care practice because 50 to 70% of primary care visits are related to stress, depression, and anxiety. Yet, poor health outcomes reflect the underutilization of mental health screening in primary care. There's also a need for AAPI representation of the mental health workforce, including 1, patient-centered care with the need for AAPI therapists themselves to serve the needs of the community because of their sensitivity to unique cultural phenomenon such as airing out of dirty laundry, historical and intergenerational trauma with role expectations, and family dynamics. 2, risk-taking behaviors with specific challenges in AAPI, immigrant and refugee family experiences, and the stigma of living with HIV or having an LGBTQ sexual orientation. Bridging the digital divide with health literacy and accessing health services due to documentation status is a 3rd reason that it's so important to have AAPI therapists representing the community. Before helping others, how can we best help ourselves first? In the workplace, we as AAPI professionals depend on savvy and inclusive work teams and managers to counter this stigma and the undercounting of mental health in AAPI communities. To create productive and supportive workplaces, investments in cultural change for employee belonging includes 1, developing a safe workplace culture, 2, developing a no tolerance policy for incivility and bullying, 3, destigmatization of mental health, and 4, celebration of unique talents and skills for diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. What tools do you need to ensure you have a psychologically safe workplace and teams that are inclusive? In the community, I committed a deliberate pathway for amplifying AAPI community voice in building allies towards health equity. Community activism can take many forms, such as 1, facilitating a mental health panel in a community forum, 2, sharing a Facebook posting to raise awareness about Suicide Prevention Month, 3, calling for more research to ensure the mental health needs of diverse AAPI communities can be accurately described. With allies from the mental health field and community activists, we can partner with AAPI professionals to advocate for this same data disaggregation and data sovereignty. The unique mental health needs, health literacy, and lived experiences of, for example, Chinese, Laotian, Cambodian, to name a few, are not all the same. What steps can you take to advocate for ANHPI community wellness?
Thank you so much, Ms. Karen Kwok. That is such a needed topic that hasn't really been addressed yet, is how important it is, the health advocacy and our mental health in our experiences in healthcare as well. So just as a reminder to everybody, you can book the speaker by emailing speakersbureau@nap.org. What do you think, Robert?
You know, again, I think about going into mental health and counseling myself, how important it is to have a person behind you speaking with you that looks like you or can at least relate to you. Again, as a Black and Korean American, it's very important that I seek out that. I seek that out when I look at my medical professions, like doctors or like mental health professionals. And even with my background in medical sociology and studying the doctor-patient relationship, studies show that when we are seen and heard in the doctor's office or in healthcare, it really does resonate with us because they believe in us and they see us. And so again, Isa, I know with you being in mental health and you being Asian, I'm sure that does a lot for our community because sometimes we seek that out and there's not really a button where you can press that you want your doctor to be Asian. So I know that when you do have clients, they feel seen and they feel heard. And I just personally know what that feels like. And so I'm really appreciative of what Karen brought to the table. So now,
okay, go ahead.
Okay, so now our next speaker is a pharmacist who presents regularly about patient safety problems and solutions as an advocate and as an activist. Now, she believes problems can be solved, but only if we start talking about it more. Today, she helps us start that conversation by sharing how we can protect ourselves as patients or our family if we're responsible for them, and using her own powerful personal story to help make that point. The speaker is Dr. Soojin Jun with her message, Patient Safety, Protect Yourself. Please welcome Dr. Soojin Jun. Patient safety, protect yourself.
Hi, my name is Soojin Jun. I'm a pharmacist, patient safety activist, and co-founder of Patients for Patient Safety US. We are a group of patient safety activists who have experienced medical harm either directly or indirectly through our loved ones. Our goal is zero preventable harm, and we believe in the power of our stories, changing and healing healthcare. Today, I'd like to share my story and caregiving journey for my father, who is in the background, and how that journey has made me change my career and become an activist. And I'd like to share a couple of tips on how you can protect yourself and your loved ones. 15 years ago, my father was diagnosed with stage 3 esophageal cancer. Because he was a foreigner, did not have a good insurance, and because he had language and cultural barriers, he experienced many gaps of care. Because where the cancer was, he had to get something called G-tube placement for his feeding, and he was hospitalized. After that, he was transferred to a nursing home. Then he had to come home when insurance coverage ended. I received 20 different medications on a list, and one of them was something called sliding scale insulin regimen. So I found out he was also diagnosed with type 2 diabetes in the transitions of care when he got home. Sliding scale insulin regimen is a difficult regimen for lay people. What that meant was you would test the patient throughout the day, and if the glucose came out to be high, you would give high dose of insulin. And I followed doctor's order religiously because I did not know any better. I was a wedding videographer with 2 little kids. I knew nothing about healthcare. And that was a big mistake because what was not told was the critical information I did not have at the time. There was an intricate relationship of food, water, insulin and glucose. And if patient was dehydrated, the glucometer could give false reading. And if he had false reading, there's a high chance of adverse events happening because I would give high dose of insulin. And that's exactly what happened. The first time it happened, his sugar was too low now, and he had to go to ER. The ER would discharge him after restoring his glucose without further education or any direction on how he can prevent if something like that would happen again. 2 weeks later, the same thing happened. At the same hospital for the same cause. Still, there was no intervention. We were distressed, and our concerns were dismissed by his primary doctor, as if it was something that would happen if patient was on insulin. Disappointed with the care he was getting, he decided to go back to his home country, South Korea, and we had to book the flights for all of us because I couldn't let him go by himself. 1 week before our flight, he has severe abdominal pain, and on the third visit to the ER, he passed away. Since then, I changed my career to be a pharmacist. And what was interesting was I learned all the information that I needed in the classroom of pharmacy school. If I did not go to pharmacy school, I probably wouldn't know what happened to my dad or why he would have passed away. Can you imagine how many people don't know why their loved ones died? After 8 years of sleepless nights, I became a pharmacist, and I knew I was only at the tip of the iceberg. I began sharing my stories and met so many people who had no barriers like I did, but still experienced medical harm. This is an urgent matter. I'd like to share a couple of tips on how you can protect yourself and your loved ones. First, do your own research. It is important and critical that you do your research on medication, doctor, and the hospital that you're visiting. 2, bring someone with you. Someone who can take notes and do debrief after the visit so you can make sound judgment and decisions. And if there isn't anyone around you to take with you, there are advocates you can hire. It's important that you be a self-advocate if you don't have anyone or cannot hire anyone. And if you need further help, assistance, please feel free to reach out. Asian Americans are so-called the perfect race. We are quiet, we do hard work, don't complain. We need to break the stereotype to stay safe. I care about you. Your lives matter. Thank you.
Wow, such a personal and powerful story by Dr. Soojin Jun. Thank you first for sharing that with us. And again, I just send my condolences to you, as well as I want to make sure that I encourage you to continue to speak up, continue to advocate on behalf of our community and others, and know that your work matters. And I hope some of our listeners pick up that too, to recognize the power that you have in representing your work and the work that you do and the impact that it has on those that receive that type of work. And as a medical sociologist, again, we think about the barriers, the cultural barriers that exist between the doctor and the patient, whether that be language or culture. And what I recognize is that these often do lead to negative health outcomes. And that is an explanation of some of the racial disparities that we have. And so this has a foundational impact on our community as a whole. And we continue to think about the root causes of those disparities. And so it's important that we continue to amplify our voices and elevate us in the sciences and technology so that we can, again, be seen and be heard when we do have and need these services. Isa, how did that resonate with you?
I couldn't have said it better myself. Just another amazing and dynamic story of somebody who used her hardships, her challenges, her adversity, and transformed that into a voice for good and for change. So thank you so much to Dr. Jin. And now, exciting news, we have another VIP swag raffle. This is going to be for an Asian-inspired cocktail demo and storytelling. Who wouldn't want this swag? Get a personalized lesson from cocktail master and founder of Salty Paloma, Amanda Chen, the speaker that you heard earlier. Shake things up with a pretty cocktail and unforgettable stories about an Asian Canadian in Mexico City. Can the Speaker Expo or statistician calculate the odds of winning among the attendees and tell us who won? Great, well, it looks like we have a winner. Congratulations to Mr. Ben Hum of NAP Toronto, super exciting. And when you talk about today's event on social media, just a reminder to please use the hashtag First Class and Speakers Expo. So now I want to go ahead and introduce the fifth topic, which is Asians and Pacific Islanders. Before the next speaker took her entrepreneurial leap, she spent years as a corporate lawyer and as a full-time mom to her 3 children. Over the years, her courage to speak up, stand up, and take action was lost and then found. Originally from Guam, Christina has made it her mission to teach others to reclaim their courage and use their voice to ensure everyone is seen, heard, and valued. The speaker is Ms. Christina Ching with her message, How to Turn Silence into Courage, a Pacific Islanders Epiphany. Please welcome Ms. Christina.
Half a day, that's how we greet each other on the island of Guam where I grew up. When I left my island home at the age of 17, I didn't think I'd spend the next 30 plus years being the only one from Guam everywhere I went. When I first got to the States, I was in culture shock because it was the first time I had ever been surrounded by people who did not look like me. And the questions that came with being the only one from Guam dumbfounded me, to be honest. I had never been asked if I live in a grass hut, if I suffer from island fever, or why I speak perfect English. These questions didn't make any sense to me and frankly were so unexpected. I was confused and I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing and smiled in silence. Even though I had friends, I started to feel like I didn't belong. I felt smaller than I already am, and I'm only 5'2". It didn't take long for me to become an expert at smiling in silence. One of my favorite quotes is by the brilliant vulnerability researcher, Brené Brown. She says the opposite of belonging is fitting in, and that's exactly what I tried to do. I forgot who I was and assimilated as best I could. In fact, in college, I turned down an invitation to join the Chinese Students Association because I didn't want it to look like I wasn't trying to fit in, if that makes any sense. In hindsight, that was a huge mistake. As I strived to fit in, I lost sight of my identity, and I felt more and more like an outsider. A great quote by Gavin de Becker, the author of The Gift of Fear, says, "The loss of identity is a type of death all by itself. Losing your identity is as if part of you has died. And after years of internalizing what other people thought or said about me, or where I came from, my identity was gone." I practiced smiling in silence daily, and because I chose to practice that rather than speaking up for myself, the confident me I knew back when I was 17 no longer existed. I had an epiphany one day and decided that I needed to get the confident me back. How'd I do it? Well, I'm still a work in progress, And if we had more time today, I'd share how I did it, because I don't want you spending over 25 years of your life lacking self-confidence and losing your identity like I did. We'd talk about confidence blockers and how to build a daily confidence habit. But what we can talk about today is the effect that silence has on your self-confidence and the power of speaking up. You see, I realized that smiling in silence was sentencing me, not serving me. And by staying silent and not speaking up for myself, I allowed others' opinions to cloud how I saw myself. I no longer saw myself as an Asian Pacific Islander woman from Guam. I didn't know where I belonged or even if I belonged. Instead, I became invisible because I stayed silent to keep the peace and to fit in. For example, it was easier to let someone walk into my house with their shoes on than speak up and explain that wearing shoes in my home was against my culture. I'd say to myself, just say nothing and let it go. It's easier that way. It doesn't matter. You don't matter. Has this ever happened to you? Think about this. Henry David Thoreau wrote, "The price of anything is the amount of life you exchange for it." I unknowingly and unwillingly gave up 28 years of my life. Tell me, how much of your life are you willing to exchange for not speaking up? A few years ago, I owned a kickboxing studio. One of my trainers was Hawaiian. He would walk into the studio every single day with an aloha and a smile. One day, one of our members asked him why he said that. She meant aloha, as if greeting us in his native language was wrong. Crazy, right? My old self would have smiled in silence and ignored her comment. In fact, I saw the surprise on my trainer's face and I felt his pain. My new self said to her that in Hawaii, we greet each other with aloha. I remember the look my trainer gave me after I spoke up to this member. It was priceless. He knew I had his back and he felt like he belonged. And for the first time in 3 decades, so did I. I'm proud that I was able to stand up for him the way no one stood up for me, the way I never stood up for myself. That simple act of standing up for him not only gave him confidence, but it also boosted mine. The confidence to stop smiling in silence. You see, the simple act of doing something, taking action, or taking a risk will remind you that you've always had the confidence within you. We only lose our courage when we choose not to act. I no longer let comments like these make me question the way I feel about where I'm from, and neither should you. Listen, even if we know someone will inevitably try to make us feel like we don't belong, and believe me, they will keep trying, be brave enough to show up as the true you, whatever that looks like. Don't let what other people think or say or what society expects you to do change the way you see yourself. Because when we do nothing, we ignore it even happened, and then nothing will ever change. If we don't speak up, how will the world know we exist? And we do exist, beautifully and uniquely. If you take only one thing away from this, please do not default to smiling in silence. And if you see someone else struggling, be brave for them and speak up. So let's start speaking up right now by saying 3 things together. And I challenge you to say them daily so you'll believe them when you say them. Are you ready? I belong here. My voice matters. I matter. Thank you. And as we say it in Guam, si ju'us ma'asi.
Wow, such a beautiful message from Christina. And I just want to put a little story in there that through the Navy, I actually had the chance to spend several months in Guam, and I can just attest to what a beautiful and vibrant place it is. But it is just this small island in the middle of the Pacific. So a lot of the people from Guam may feel like they don't really belong, right, elsewhere. And it's just, I think it's so special to highlight the stories and the voices of Pacific Islanders and be able to learn from them and just their unique stories.
Absolutely. When we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, another thing that we add on to that is about a sense of belonging, right? It's not only one thing to include diverse groups based on their backgrounds and their perspectives, but also to create a space where they belong, where they feel accepted, where they feel seen. And that takes an additional effort than just having a seat at the table. And so I think we all can agree that we all want to belong. We all want to fit in. We all want to feel accepted. And so I really appreciate that she shared that with us and how to activate our own selves to project that, to give us a sense of belonging. And I just think about now with what's happening in the world, again, my own personal history of losing my mother to a hate crime in the public and a hate crime that was based in racial hatred. We can no longer be silent. We can no longer have our heads down. Now is the time to speak. Again, we talked about it earlier. There's never going to be an appropriate time. Now is the time where we do have to speak out. We have to create allyships and collaborative groups and unity. But more importantly, we have to demonstrate and prove that we are here. We're not going anywhere. And we are here with a purpose and much to bring to the table. So I'm just really impressed with that. And again, if you are just as impressed as I am, don't forget, look in our comment section, figure out how you can get these speakers to your event and bring them along so that you can have a sense of belonging at your organization. And again, amplify Asian American voices. That's why I'm really just so happy to be a part of NAP and the Speakers Bureau for putting this event on. So that's just a great thing. Now, our next speaker is a growth CEO turned award-winning author and keynote speaker on Hawaiian value. As a member of the Forbes Technology Council, he was selected by Business Talk magazine as one of the most influential business leaders of 2021. And he was also named within Fortune India as one of the unstoppable world's business minds. The speaker is AJ Perkins with his message, Mahalo in business, Hawaiian values to boost your business. Please help me welcome AJ Perkins with Mahalo in business, Hawaiian values to boost your business. It seems like we're having a little technical difficulties. We're gonna move on to that. While we wait on AJ Perkins' video, I'll just let you know again, that's why, again, we do want a sense of belonging. We do want to speak up and make sure that we're present and glad to be here. And, I think about, that's why I'm glad to boastfully and unapologetically tell everyone that I am Black and I'm Korean and get to redefine what that looks like.
Absolutely, Robert. Yeah, I do think we're having some technical difficulties as well, but it really opens the floor for us to be able to get in some further discussion. Actually, we're gonna move on and go to the next speaker, shake things up a little bit. So the next speaker is an award-winning filmmaker whose love for movies started while watching propaganda films in her childhood during the Chinese Cultural Revolution. So interesting. She is best known for producing 2 Oscar-qualified, critically acclaimed animation shorts. One of them, Chang Yu's Journey, was written and directed by her son Perry Chen and premiered at the prestigious Toronto International Film Festival. In her former life, she was a biotech executive who was regularly recognized on national and trade media. Today, she will share with us a transformative journey of AAPI storytelling. The speaker is Dr. Zhu Shen with her message, From Tiger Mom to Zen Mom, a transformative journey of AAPI storytelling.
One of my fondest memories as a new mother was watching animated movies with my precocious little boy, Perry, on my lap. Charlotte's Web was his favorite growing up. In the story, a farm pig, Wilbur, set for slaughter, strikes up an unlikely friendship with Charlotte, a spider who ultimately saves his life, quite literally by pulling the strings with her web. At 9, Perry told me that as a mother, I was the Charlotte to his Wilbur, and I chuckled. It was my business and PR expertise that plucked him from an anonymous third grader into the limelight on his CBS Evening News debut as America's youngest film critic and an overnight sensation. Raising my son as a single mom was not something I signed up for, but my husband Chang Yu had just taken a full-time position in China. Without his father around, Perry started to get into trouble. School was far too easy, and he got bored out of his mind. Watching Charlotte's Web with Perry, I had an epiphany and a worthy challenge to channel his energy and creativity and let him shine in something that he loved, storytelling and animation. Not only would I get him to write reviews of his favorite movies, I would take him professional. My burden had now transformed into a golden opportunity. My father, a Peking University educated chemist, steered me towards a career in medicine, away from art that I loved. If parental planning could get me into the top medical school in China, imagine how much further I could push my son on something he lived and breathed if I started him out at a much younger age. But in my single-minded pursuit to make my son the brightest star he could ever be, TEDx speaker at 10, an Oscar-qualified animator at 11, I neglected to be the mother that he needed when he needed me the most. My virtual single motherhood became a reality when my husband was succumbing to terminal cancer when Perry was 12. He began to animate a personal tribute to Chang Yu's journey to give hope to his dad in his final days. My love in action was recruiting friends to fund my son's animation film, and his directorial debut that could pave the way for a bright future in Hollywood. A second Oscar qualification felt within reach. But that was just the opposite of what my son wanted or needed while in his grief. He threatened to quit, and we were becoming strangers. There wasn't a mother on earth who would go to such lengths to support her child. So why couldn't my son appreciate it? It took me years to realize that I had put being an agent, a publicist, a producer, above being the mom that my son truly needed. Cornell professor Carl Pilmer's research estimates that 27% of Americans are estranged from their families. That's 68 million people, a silent and devastating pandemic that few are talking about. A big part of what causes families to drift apart is conditional love based on achievements and parental expectations. Too many of us say we love our children unconditionally, but act differently. When our kids see our actions don't match up with our words, they start to resent us and pull away because the foundation of trust is broken. Are you a tiger mom or tiger dad? Have you been raised by a tiger parent yourself? If so, how do you get out of it? The first step is to recognize something is wrong. Next, we must be willing to change and see our child in a different light if we want to connect with them heart to heart. I had to let go of my vision of the star that I wanted my son to always be. and choose to accept the person he was growing into. I had to let go all I have invested, all I had built up over the years, including our animation film, The Hollywood Dream, in order to save the only thing that truly mattered, my son. Today, my son Perry has grown into my best friend, collaborator, and mentor in storytelling and filmmaking. In my new creative endeavors that I always longed for as a child, but never got to pursue until now. If you want to learn more about how we got here, I invite you to follow my odyssey from a tiger mom to a Zen mom, featured in my documentary debut, Journey of 1,000 Miles. There is hope for all tiger moms and tiger dads if and when you commit to change.
Thank you, Dr. Shen. I just love that, Robert. Just that story of mother-child, of unconditional love, of transforming from a tiger mom, which is kind of the stereotypical personality that a lot of Asian Americans identify with, to a Zen mom. I just love that, and how, kind of, again, changing the tide of what you think you should do into embracing the unknown, and how that could flourish into something so beautiful. So just as a reminder to everybody, if you want to book Dr. Shen, go ahead and check the comments or reach out to speakersbureau@nap.org.
Absolutely. My mother was definitely a tiger mom. But, and like I say, when I got my PhD, she would call it a thinking doctor. And at first I thought she wasn't happy or proud. But eventually she did come around and recognize the value in that, and how appreciative the people that I served was for that and the work that I did. And so it really resonated with me when we talk about unconditional love and the lead that support has. And so I know that if she was definitely here today, while she wouldn't be happy that we're speaking about her, as most Asian moms wouldn't, she really would be proud that I am speaking up. And I know that she would definitely support me. So I'm really appreciative of that. It looks like we also have our next speaker, AJ Perkins, who is back with us, and he's going to present to us today in the Muhalo in Business, Hawaiian Values to Boost Your Business. So let's take a break and listen to AJ Perkins. All right, maybe we're not quite there yet, but we can definitely move on to see what we have going on. And I'll bring up our next speaker. They're ready right now. So we can think about them and think about, are you tired of the single narrative of who you are and who you will ever be? Well, during his 4th year of teaching at a New York City high school, our next speaker had to transition from in-person to online teaching within a week when the pandemic shut down the schools nationwide. That was his moment of truth. Do you think he quit? I don't think so. Our speaker is Zuo Bin Tang, with his inspirational message, charting your own leadership path through initiative and determination. And pay attention, I think he's going to give you some homework at the end. So let's listen to Dr. Tang's talk. Thank you.
Have you ever seen a line dance performance during the Lunar New Year? The kind that usually involves 2 performers with a line costume on their backs, one at the tail position and another at the head position. Now imagine for a moment that the electricity in your house is out at night. It's dark. You're holding a flashlight or your phone with the flashlight app on. You now have some visibility of what's ahead of you, but it's rather limited. This is what it felt like when I would first perform as a line dancer at the tail position, with limited visibility of the dancer ahead of me and my own legs and shoes. Have you ever felt that you have limited visibility of what's ahead of you professionally or personally? What are you doing about that? My name is Zuo Bin Tang. I'm here to share my journey of becoming a leader through taking advantages of opportunity and charting my own career path. Let me first warn you that it's by no means a glamorous walk down the red carpet. However, I truly believe that through taking advantages of multiple available opportunities during the past few years, I've gained much more visibility of my own future than ever before. My journey started as an immigrant story. I immigrated from Guangzhou, China to New York City in the 1990s and adjusted to the language and culture quickly enough and performed well enough to land me a full scholarship to study finance and prepare myself for a career on Wall Street. However, I had a change of heart during my undergrad years and took an interest in education. Although I completed my studies in finance, I pursued my first master's degree in education. After spending more than a decade working in the nonprofit sector, where I first learned to perform as a line dancer, I took the initiative to change careers as a secondary school math teacher because I wanted to directly serve students and families. It took me a few years to get used to the teaching profession. Then the pandemic hit, just when I was getting into the flow of the job. Can you imagine having to pivot from in-person teaching that feeds off lively discussions to online teaching where you're trying to teach while also avoiding the thought of, what percentage of my students are actually in front of those blank screens? However, I saw the pandemic as an equalizer for all teachers because we all had to learn new skills in order to teach effectively online. This became one of the defining moments of my professional career. While some teachers continued their in-person teaching methods online, I was motivated to equip myself with new educational technology tools to better engage students remotely. I devoted many hours of my own time to study new technology tools. As a result, I became certified in multiple technology tools. Prior to joining my current school, just months before the pandemic, I was only trained to teach an Intro to Computer Science course. Nevertheless, I stepped up and applied to be our school's CS for All Computer Science Lead. In this role, I focus on promoting equity and access to encourage students to participate in CX activities across the school and across the city. My efforts have recently landed me a spot on the selective Computer Science Teacher Association Equity Fellowship, where I now work with fellows from across the country to develop leadership in equitable teaching practices and advocacy. In addition to reinventing myself as an educator, I've also been giving back to the teaching community as a coach for early career teachers, including those from Asian American backgrounds. My leadership and contribution to education and the nonprofit field recently landed me an award as I became the recipient of the 2022 Macaulay Pioneer Alumni Award recipient. Now, please don't get me wrong. I'm not here to extol my own accolades. I'm here to encourage you to take charge of your own professional and personal life, to breaking out of your own comfort zone and stepping into leadership roles, with or without the official title. There still exists a prevailing narrative that Asian Americans are great at listening, whether as students or as working professionals, which then makes us great at being followers. If you're satisfied with being a follower, then I thank you so much for listening to my speech so far. However, if you're tired of that single narrative of who you are, or more importantly, who you will ever be, then you need to take opportunities by the horn and show others what an amazing leader you truly are. Think about a project, an opportunity, or a person you can outreach that can elevate your professional or personal life. Now comes your homework from Mr. Tang. I would like you to not simply jot down the what, but also the how. How are the concrete steps you are going to take to step out of your own comfort zone? Remember to also set a realistic timeline. As I already warned you earlier, it will not be an easy path to transform yourself into a leader, especially one without fancy titles. I know because I have been rejected and turned down by other fellowships and opportunities before. However, let these rejections fuel your fire and motivate you to try harder. You got this. It is time that we as Asian Americans get recognized for all our contributions and for our leadership. It is time that we grab the headline dancer positions and show the world that we too are transformational leaders. Thank you.
Wow, again, thank you, Mr. Tang. That was a great homework assignment and a great presentation. And again, just to reimagine what we've been hearing, we have to abandon the path that we thought we had set for us. A lot of us think about, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and then something happens and it doesn't happen that way. And I think COVID let us know that we have to be okay with that, that sometimes we do have to abandon the path that we set forth, and we have to step out on faith and step out in front. He talked about taking initiative, and I think we heard that through our speakers today. Sometimes it's going to take us to be transformative leaders, and that is to invest in yourself and believe in yourself, and again, activate the agency within to lead our community and to lead others. And lastly, I got from that we need to redefine what success looks like. Many of us, again, had an idea of what that was, but now when we take a step forward and explore doing impactful and meaningful work, that can be our new definition of success. Work that really matters, work that has an impact on our community, and work that amplifies our voices like NAP Speakers Bureau and the NAP Speakers Expo is doing today. So again, I'm just very, very glad for our speakers. And that was a great speaker by Mr. Tang. Isa, how about you?
I so agree with you. And I think that what these speakers are giving us are stories of hope, right? No matter what happened in your past, no matter where you thought you were meant to be, it's today that matters. It's the present day. Today is the first day of the rest of your life. And I think our speakers are, bringing that message home so clearly, and letting us all feel reassured that we can also kind of step up in resilience and in hope, and create a new future for ourselves. So I want to go ahead and introduce the next speaker. The next speaker is a startup executive who specializes in digital transformation and devises strategies and solutions for applying emerging technologies and advanced analytics to improve business outcomes. He has been the founding president of American Society of Engineers of Indian origin, ASEI, Silicon Valley chapter since 2015, and national chairman since 2021. In 2022, he was honored with the NAP 100 Award. The distinguished leader and speaker is Piyush Malik. Today, he will share with us Asian Indian secrets of transforming tech startups to unicorns. Right, so let's give a warm welcome to Mr. Mallick.
Did you know that the Asian Indians were barred from entering Canada and the US for decades? Hard to fathom, especially since Indians now happen to be the second largest immigrant community in the US and are significant contributors to Uncle Sam. Indians in the US have come a long way, surviving exclusionary and xenophobic waves and countless racial slurs to dominate healthcare, hospitality, and technology industries. Now, talking of the tech industry, consider these 3 data points. More than 100 tech startups founded in India have emerged as unicorns, that is, companies valued more than $1 billion in 2022. Second, Microsoft, IBM, Google, and even Starbucks, more and more iconic US companies are relying on India-born engineers as their chief executives. Third, companies currently led or owned by Indians have a market capitalization of more than $6 trillion, which is over 10% of the total market cap of all companies listed on the NASDAQ. What do you call it? Accident, luck, or hard work? From Indian startup founders not getting funded in the 90s and 2000s to startups not getting funded unless they have an Indian co-founder. change has been dramatic and welcoming. So what's the secret to success? Now, after being in the corporate and startup world for the past 30 years, I've studied this data and I can classify into 3 categories of traits: the founder's personal focus, the company's collective focus, and a secret ingredient. Now, there's been tons of information stories available for the first 2 well-known categories, that is founder's personal focus on education, family values, persistence, and hard work, and the company's collective focus on being mission-driven, hiring hungry talent, and hustle culture, and relentless execution. Let me focus on examples to illustrate the 3rd category, the secret ingredient. The secret ingredient is turning adversity into advantage, tapping into spirituality, empathy, and never forgetting their roots. Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella is credited with increasing the company value over 6-fold to $2 trillion ever since he took over in 2014. He had his own share of personal adversities, especially in his 20s when he became father to a son with special needs. And it was a turning point in his life, fueling his personal passion for and philosophy for connecting new ideas to empathy for others. And Satya has been responsible for the total transformation of the tech giant's culture to be more inclusive and empathetic. Indra Nooyi, former CEO of PepsiCo, who struggled to fit in when she first arrived in the US and was often the only person of color and the only woman in high-powered boardrooms. She was inspired from her Indian school days when her relatives would congratulate her parents instead of her for outstanding achievement. So when she was appointed as CEO, she instituted a practice of writing personal letters to the parents of each of her hundreds of executives to convey her gratitude and thanks. The parents loved them, and this resulted in a dramatic change in the culture and dynamics of her leadership team. You've perhaps heard of Take Your Kids to Work Day. I've taken my kids to IBM several times during those occasions. But have you heard of Take Your Parents to Work? Well, Raju Reddy, a friend and a Silicon Valley-based social entrepreneur, instituted that practice early on as he was facing high attrition while scaling his business at Sierra Atlantic amidst competing with IT giants. And he had a successful exit from his company, Sierra Atlantic, to Hitachi later on. Now, these practices build a closer bond between employee and the company, hence leading to better retention, better business outcomes, in addition to making our workplace more human-centric. Let me end by sharing my own story. India is a part of me. I carry it with me wherever I go. I had humble beginnings in a refugee family impacted by partition of India that happened 75 years ago, post centuries of British colonial rule. I was fortunate to grow up in a family that cherished learning and knowledge, with parents who sacrificed a lot to make sure I had opportunities to explore my interests. And every new toy or technology that arrived at our doorsteps made me inquisitive and our lives better. And that experience put me on a path to becoming an engineer with stints at big firm management consulting, big tech companies, and tech startups and nonprofits that gave me a chance to build solutions and implement cutting-edge technologies that improve the lives of people all over the world. In conclusion, almost each of the Indian origin founders and CEOs of companies I've mentioned earlier have had humble backgrounds and faced adversities while growing up. The key is to keep marching towards the goal you've set, bring your whole self to work, and never be shy of your origins to turn adversities to advantage. From my soul to yours, Namaste.
Wow, such a powerful message. Something that really resonated with me, which he said during his talk and at the end again, was use your adversity as your advantage. And I think it's so important for us all to embrace our origin story, our hardships, whatever that may be, and consider those things strengths and let those play into our larger journeys, our larger mission in life. And like he said, just kind of use that to be our greatest advantage and to make us unicorns in this world.
Absolutely. Again, our past experiences, our historical past does not define who we are. It shapes who we are. It shapes how we view the world, but it definitely doesn't have to be our master status. It definitely doesn't have to prevent us from moving forward and leading. And so what I really liked as a sociologist was how he tied history and biography together and created it to present tense. We come from a humble background. We come from a marginalized background, but he ended with talking about, again, resiliency and the courage in our community and highlighting leaders of our community who are being transformative leaders in their field. So that was, again, another great presentation to add to the many that we've had so far. So again, before we almost wrap up, I want to encourage everyone that if you are interested in any of our speakers that you heard today, please look down in our comment section, hashtag us at First Class, hashtag us at Speakers Bureau, our speaker series, Speakers Expo, 23. And don't forget to, again, look into booking many of our great speakers today. So, but as we close out our expo, it's almost time for the Lunar New Year. We will be announcing the winners of the final 2 swags after this speaker. And I'm very pleased to introduce our closing speaker, who is an expert in East Asian cultures and presents regularly at libraries, museums, and various organizations to bridge a greater intercultural understanding between Asians and non-Asians. She is known to deliver her contents in accessible ways, as well as a relatable context. Now, she will share with us the significance and activities of the Lunar New Year and what you can do to be a part of that celebration. Our closing speaker is Yvonne Wolf with her message, Lunar New Year, significance, activities, and what you can do to be a part of that celebration. Please welcome Yvonne Wolf.
Thank you, NAAAP, National Association of Asian American Professionals, for sponsoring these past 2 days of intense learning. And thank you for attending the Speakers Expo 2023. As a former educator and expat, I established Chinese Intercultural because I realized there's so much we don't know about each other. It's not just a language barrier. I enjoy sharing experiences to build relationships cross-culturally. I developed Chinese and East Asian cultural topics for programming in order to bring people together and start conversations. Community building is so important, especially after COVID. As an immigrant, I enjoy celebrating Lunar New Year in my 3rd grade classroom. As a child English learner, I often follow blindly after my classmates because honestly, I only understood about 60 to 70% of what my teacher said. So imagine that one day, my teacher said to me, Yvonne, will you explain Chinese New Year to us? I was simply so excited. I get to show children how to color a dragon, what we make for Chinese food, and why we hang up red decorations. That remains one of my fondest memories I cherish as an ESL student. But let me start by explaining what this giant rabbit is behind me. On January 22nd this year, we will be celebrating the Year of the Hare. In that spirit of goodwill, I'm here inviting you to celebrate the Lunar New Year with us. Welcome to celebrating Lunar New Year with us. Today, in this short program, I will answer 5 major questions around the Chinese New Year and the Lunar New Year. So what is Chinese New Year? What is Lunar New Year? Now, when I was a little girl, Chinese New Year was used far more often than Lunar New Year. Well, in the past 20 years, we hear Lunar New Year used a lot more. Well, let's just say that this holiday that's celebrated by about 20% of global population is New Year's to many, many countries. And many countries do not wish to be politically associated with China. And hence Lunar New Year is used far more now as a value-neutral term. And the next question would be say, well, when is Lunar New Year? Lunar New Year floats just like many of the Jewish holidays because it is on a different calendar, the calendar that's based on the moon. So this coming year, Lunar New Year will arrive on January 22nd. But is that all? Is it just a one-day celebration? Well, New Year's Eve is almost just as important and starts on January 21st. If you Google the answer for when is Lunar New Year, you are bound to get just January 22nd. But this is not just one day. The celebration lasts 15 days. You can see that counting 15 days from the 21st, and some people start celebrating on the 20th. It ends on February 5th. So 15 days of celebration, of partying and meeting with people and just having festivals, shopping, all these things are happening during this season. It's very much like our season between Christmas and New Year, where most offices are closed and school is closed too. To give you an idea of where this is celebrated, let's look at a map. That is probably the fastest way we can understand the scope of this holiday. The global perspective of this holiday is that it's mostly celebrated in East Asia, but you can see the Northern American continent also have some of these major parades and celebrations for Lunar New Year. What do people do? Now this is a question I can take hours to explain, but let's just say the first thing people do is decorate their homes. Lunar New Year is also considered the Spring Festival. This is a time when we think about spring and we wish that spring would come and take all the coldness away. So at this time, I'm going to ask Yvonne at home and show us how do you decorate a home in a Lunar New Year season. Here at home, I can show you how many people of Chinese heritage would decorate their homes. Decorations are often in red, and they are hung on either side of the door symmetrically. Many times, decorations are in red because red represents warm color. It's a warm feeling that we hope will come with the spring season. The new year will bring us many warm blessings. So here is a character that's often seen on these decorations, and this represents blessings or good fortune. It is the wish of the new year that this blessing would come through our doors and windows and change the luck that we have currently. So now our home is ready for the Lunar New Year. Thank you, Yvonne at home. Well, here is how Lunar New Year is celebrated outside. You can see lots of dragon dances and lion dances, and most importantly, people give away red envelopes. Now, this is usually done by adults for children. Now, this is something that is very special, and we are always using these Lunar New Year red envelopes to give away money gifts. Now, I just want to tell you that in my personal experience, my mother-in-law, who is non-Asian, has picked up this tradition and has continued that with my children. I am eternally grateful for that because here, since we moved to Illinois, I don't have any family here in this area, and there's no Chinese family to give my children red envelopes. My mother-in-law found out that Hallmark sells red envelopes, and ever since then, since we moved here, she has given these small red envelopes to my children during the Lunar New Year season. So now they can experience what I experienced as a child. During this season of 15 days, wherever we visit our family and friends, it's very customary to give away red envelopes to children, and my envelopes would be stuffed in my pockets. Now is the most important part. What can you do to be part of this celebration? Well, first thing is that eating out at a Chinese restaurant would be the typical way that most people of Chinese heritage would celebrate Lunar New Year. And then another thing you could do is wear red. Oh, I'm not ready. Sorry, give me a second. Good, now I'm ready for the Lunar New Year. So the first thing you can do is eat together. Second is to wear red like myself and like this family here. And the third thing you can do is to learn to say 恭喜发财, which means Happy New Year in Chinese. Now in this phrase, you have it in Pinyin, and this is a pronunciation. And if you have heard of 恭喜发财, that was in Cantonese. And in Mandarin, it is 恭喜发财. With that, 恭喜发财, I wish you a happy Lunar New Year. Some of the other programs I have developed are a traditional Chinese tea demonstration, hidden messages in Chinese food, a guided walk of a East Asian garden, and yin and yang of mindfulness. I hope that you will join me in some of this cross-cultural programming and bring people together and start conversations.
Wow, that was an amazing closing. Thank you again, Yvonne. I'm not that familiar with Lunar New Year. We didn't celebrate it much. I do remember getting the red envelopes from some of my mom's friends. My mom used to cook seaweed soup. And I also used to remember going to H Mart or the grocery store and getting a new calendar. Again, as a foodie, I appreciated that because it had recipes in there. And so that's one way where I've learned to develop a cooking style and cooking Korean food. Isa, did you celebrate Chinese New Year?
Kind of to the same extent you did, also had seaweed soup, us being half Korean, I think we celebrated it, in our own way like that. But I did grow up predominantly in a very Asian community, growing up in New York. So had a lot of Chinese friends and kind of lived vicariously through them. But I just loved her presentation, Miss Yvonne Wolf, and learning more about the Lunar New Year and how we can start to celebrate it for ourselves.
Right, absolutely. I definitely love how she demonstrated and showed us how to decorate the house and gave us tips on that. She looked amazing in her traditional garments and things like that. So again, I want to wish everyone here a happy Lunar New Year that does celebrate it. And I'll make sure I eat some seaweed soup. But I think we have one more final swag before we go, and Isa, help take us out.
Yeah. So to continue the positive vibe that we have going, I'm going to introduce our final two VIP swags, which are Mahalo Does Not Mean Trash ebook and a private screening of A Journey of 1,000 Miles. So I will first introduce what these are, and then we will introduce the winners or announce the winners. So published in 2022, Mahalo Does Not Mean Trash is the first book that celebrates Hawaiian values for all ages through children's eyes, and is a book award pro nominee. The book is written by AJ Perkins, who unfortunately we had some technical difficulties, so we weren't able to hear him speak, but it's written by him and his children. So lovely. And the grand finale swag is a special treat, a private screening of a documentary film directed by Zhu Shen, who spoke about Tiger to Zen Mom. The documentary is called Journey of 1,000 Miles, endorsed by Janet Yang, the president of the Academy of Motion Pictures. Wow. It is about the mom's transformative journey from a tiger mom to a Zen mom in her efforts to connect with her son and rebuild their relationship and reclaim their own artistic prowess in the process. Because the documentary has not been officially released worldwide, the private screening will be a work in progress film sample. So we want to announce the winners now. So staff, will you please put in the comments the winner, and Wow, it's actually for everybody. Yep, you heard that right. Anybody who enters can win these 2 pieces of swag. So if you want some, go to the event website, publicspeakingforeveryone.com. That's number 4.com, foreveryone.com. So let me repeat that, publicspeakingforeveryone.com, and sign up at the swags page. So with that, take it away, Robert.
No, well, that was nicely done, Isa. Again, thank you for partnering with me and making today the event was very much successful because of you, and I appreciate you and all the work that you've done. And congratulations to all the swag winners today. I hope that you enjoy those books. I'm going to work on getting some of that swag myself. And I say everyone is a winner today because I hope, like you, we were creating history together with the first Asian and Pacific Islander-centered Speaker Expo. This was a truly first-class experience. And on behalf of the founding director, Mandy Shaw, NAP, and all of our speakers today, I want to extend a true heartfelt thank you for joining us and, again, investing in yourself. I hope to work with and see some of you soon. Again, don't forget to hashtag us and look down in the comment sections to book some of our speakers. Again, thank you for joining us, and I hope you have a great, wonderful rest of your day.
Goodbye.